Okay, it's 7:01. I'll call this meeting of the Urbana City Council Committee of the Whole to order. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Here.
Mr. Ammons, Mr. Brown,
Here.
Mr. Jacobson,
Here.
Mr. Madigan, Miss Marlin,
Here.
Mr. Roberts,
Here.
Mr. Smythe,
Here.
Mayor Pressing.
Here.
Thank you. First, we have approval of the minutes from the previous meeting, February 27th.
So moved. Second.
It's been moved approval by Ammons and second by Smythe. Any corrections? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Are there any additions to the agenda? Seeing none. Next is public input. I have a number of people. I have a number of people wishing to speak, and some people that can't hear me, so I'll try to speak louder. I don't think we have the limit, so we can still. You can speak up to 5 minutes, and it looks like everyone except for one is for the Landmark Hotel. That's not an agenda item other than a presentation, so everybody will be speaking during public input. We won't be waiting till the time of the agenda. First, I have Bishop King James and Reverend Dr. Evelyn B. Underwood. Do not wish to address the council, but ask that their position be entered that they are continually concerned about the Dr. Ellis sewer problems. Let's see. Okay, I have a couple on first followers. I'll go ahead and call those first, if that's okay. Bethany Britton.
You do.
Hi, how's everyone doing?
All right. How are you?
Good. My name is Bethany Britton. I am a peer mentor at First Followers. I'm here today to really kind of tell you about my background. A little bit over 16 months ago, I was battling the disease of addiction. I was really lost and I couldn't really find my way, but I got to a point that I did make it to recovery. While I was in recovery, I received some types of assistance that was more like relapse prevention assistance, but it didn't help me build on my recovery. It didn't make me feel as if things that I wanted out of life was possible. So about after 4 months or so, still staying clean, but really not knowing what direction I needed to go in, I ended up stumbling across First Followers. And when I entered in there, it was more a personal base with them. They asked me what I wanted to do in life, which was really new to me because nobody else had ever asked me anything like that. You know, all they wanted to do was keep me clean and that was it, and that's just not how it works, especially in recovery. We have to learn how to relive all over again. And so in doing that, they probed questions and, you know, asked me what I wanted to do and what I wanted to do to help people. And I realized that through my experience and all the struggles that I had, that that's what I wanted to do, was help other people. They encouraged me. They helped me go back to the University of Illinois. I started that challenge 20 years ago, and I am happy to say that I do graduate this spring. But if it wasn't through the support and just them pushing me to the limits and making me feel as if they believed in me, that wouldn't have been possible. I also got admitted into grad school at the School of Social Work, so I hope to one day be doing the same type of work that they do. But I just know that this program is one that can build people up. Some of the other programs are kind of missing that. You know, when I committed a crime, I became a statistic. When I was booked in, I received an inmate number. You know, when I came to get help out in the community and tried to get help from other organizations, I became a number on a waiting list. And First Followers was the only place that I could actually go in, and I became a person. And I just want to be able, as a peer mentor, to give back what was given to me and maybe awaken other people's dreams, because just because, you know, we are formerly incarcerated, or just because we are battling a disease of addiction and trying to find our way, we can make it, and we can become productive citizens of the society and our community. So I just hope that everybody listens today with an open mind and willingness. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Perry Klein.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen.
Good evening.
My name is Perry Klein. I'm a mentor at First Followers, and Bethany's story is sort of similar to mine. Both of us are recovering addicts, and I just want to tell a story how I got to First Followers. It was this one day I was in a meeting, a Narcotics Anonymous meeting here in town, and this one guy had this little flyer that said something about First Followers over there, reentry program. So I was looking at it, and it had where they was located at. So I said, let me take a chance to go over here. Reason was I was looking for work, and I couldn't find a job because I'm a formerly incarcerated person, and the jobs that I wanted to have, you know, those background checks always came back, and I never got that job. So when I went over to First Followers and I told them a little bit of my story, and I told them I've been clean now for over 4.5 years, and that I was going to Parkland trying to get a degree. So they probed me for like about a week, and they decided to let me come over and be a peer mentor with them. So as I was doing this job with them, I felt this empowerment that came over me, and they helped me feel like I was a part of in the community. And in my job, we do a drop-in center where we help formerly incarcerated people with resumes, get their IDs, and help them find jobs. Here it is, a person that was trying to look for a job. Now I'm helping formerly incarcerated people trying to get a job. So that was like empowerment within itself. So and we also did we did this particulatory reaction research that I'm sure probably James and Marlon will talk about later on today. But that research gave us a lot of information on what basically probably we already knew. But it was like a relief, because it felt like that I wasn't by myself after we got all this information. And so I know that it's a lot of work that needs to be done in this community with formerly incarcerated people. But our motto is building community through reentry, because these people that's like in our community that's formerly incarcerated people, these are people in our community as well. And it feels good sometimes when you helping somebody try to find work, try to better themselves. So First Follower has given me this big opportunity to help me. And, you know, let me add that now, you know, being in First Followers, you know, I graduated from Parkland. Now they helped me. They fought for me to get in the University of Illinois. Now I'm a junior in the social work program at the University of Illinois today. And so this program is, for First Followers, is giving me everything. So thanks.
Very good.
Thank you. Dan Maloney does not wish to speak, but he is in support of saving the Urbana Landmark Hotel redevelopment plan. Is that right, Dan? You don't want to speak? Okay. Scott Glassman does not wish to speak, but he is in support of the Landmark Hotel. Marcus Harris.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the council. I come here today as a businessman, a developer, and a property owner in Urbana. The only thing I have to say about the hotel project is I would like you all to very carefully weigh out the options and how it's funded and all of those things, because I think it's very important that we revitalize the downtown area, revitalize the Lincoln Square Mall area, but we need to be careful at what cost. And although I'm happy that outside developers are here to do this, I like to look for local dollars. I like our money to stay within our community, so I look at other projects that Champaign has done, like the I Hotel and the Marriott, and those involved local developers like JSM and the Hartmans and Peter Fox and so on. So I shouldn't say that I'm in opposition to the hotel. I would like more information. And I know this is just the rolling out of this, but as you proceed, please proceed with caution, because the dollar amount that we're talking about is a very large amount, and it will have a great impact, either positive or negative, on our community and our general fund and our monies. And those monies include the property taxes that I pay, the revenue that my businesses bring to this town. So that's what I'm here for today. So that's all I have. Thank you very much, and thank you for creating the opportunity for people to come into our community and actually build things. Thank you.
What was your name again?
What's that?
Your name again?
My name is Marcus Harris.
Marcus Harris. All right,
And
thank you.
I own a small company called Rent Champaign, which is a property management company here in town. I own a few other businesses like High Caliber Training Center. I own some apartment buildings. Urbana Boulders is one of my projects that I own the building in and help those gentlemen to do. And again, a lot of those things, I'm always happy that the city is reaching out to developers. But as a developer who has taken very little public money to do what I've done, I want it very carefully looked at how we distribute our public monies to developers, and what developers we're giving that to, and what their plan is, and what the consequences are. So that's my background. And I've been doing business here I started with my first house 18 years ago, and I own close to 100 single-family homes and over 250 rental units. So
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you. Gina Paglicio? Paglicio? Gina.
Thanks, Bill, and thanks to all of you. My name's Gina Peluso. I live here in Urbana, and just to get everything out there and to be transparent, I am on the HPC, but I'm here speaking for myself. So I've been coming to city council meetings for a really long time talking about the Urbana Hotel. It was the Urbana Lincoln Hotel when I first started coming talking to you about it. And I was very vocal in my support of making sure that we saved the hotel back then and making sure that we got it landmarked. The first time it came up for nomination, once I moved into town, it wasn't approved. The second time it was, and I was very pleased about that. When we went into the development deal with the current owner, or, I don't know if he still owns it or not, but I was very, I don't want to say critical, but I was leery because of his background. He didn't have a background in restoring historic properties. He had a hotel on a cliff in California that everybody wants to go to because it's right on the ocean. And I had a friend that worked there, and we tried to get like game nights going at the bar on Friday nights and get people in there and get people, invigorated about maybe this hotel doing something. And unfortunately, it didn't. So I'm here to, kind of like the last gentleman, kind of cautiously give my support to whatever may come from this development deal. I'm wondering if the development people will be looking at using either state or federal historic tax credits, and if that could somehow offset that big bonding number that we're all looking at these days. These people have a track record. They did the Pierre Marquette in Peoria. It's gorgeous. I got the chance to walk through it. The lobby, not so historic, but the historic parts are very historic. So I guess like the gentleman before me, I'm urging you to to look at this, but also to obviously protect the city. Oh, one other thing. How long, if we do this bonding thing, what would be our return on investment? How many years would it take to pay that off? So just a couple of questions that I want to put out there that maybe you can throw at the developers while they're up here speaking. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Alice Novak.
Thank you. I'm here this evening to speak in enthusiastic support of the Lincoln Hotel project with Crimson Rock Capital and Hilton's Tapestry Collection. In my recollection, brand affiliation has been at the core of hotel discussions from the start, and now we have the perfect fit. Tapestry Collection by Hilton is promoted online as a gathering of unique hotels that have been chosen because of a commitment to weaving their own story. Think of the stories that can be woven in the Urbana Lincoln Hotel. I've had the pleasure of staying in a number of boutique hotels in my travels, including the Andaz Savannah in Savannah, Georgia, which is a Hyatt chain, the Hotel Florence in Florence, South Carolina, which is part of the Ascend Hotel Collection, Choice Hotels, including Clarion. And the Florence is a historic hardware store that was rehabbed using the tax credits and other incentives. And Florence is quickly becoming revitalized thanks to this hotel being an economic engine for that formerly decaying downtown. I've also stayed in a number of Kimpton hotels, including the George Washington in Washington, D.C., the Hotel Monaco in Chicago, the former Hotel Burnham, also in Chicago, National Historic Landmark Building, the former Reliance Building designed by Burnham and Root, and the 9-0 in Boston. These have featured a variety of interesting features, including over-the-top furnishings, innovative restaurants, pet-friendly rooms, and in the Kimpton, if you don't bring your own pet, you can borrow a goldfish at the front desk. Loaner bicycles, nightly happy hours, and even one visit, a handwriting analysis in true crystal ball fashion. The proposed project is the perfect fit for the Lincoln Hotel and for Urbana. Our downtown has will become a destination, and the spin-off effects will be significant if this hotel project goes through. I understand the developer will be using the 20% rehabilitation investment tax credit, a benefit of the hotel's listing in the National Register of Historic Places, which along with local landmark designation will ensure a proper level of preservation for this 1920s Lincoln Hotel. I've also heard that there's an issue of sustainability that has come up with regard to the reuse of the Lincoln Hotel, and I want to address this briefly. In your spare time, I encourage you to Google "The greenest building has already been built," and you'll get a great variety of reports and articles. One of the articles is titled "If Betty White Were a Green Building," which is part of the U.S. Green Building Council and more. There's also information from the National Trust for Historic Preservation, which has a Preservation Green Lab. You should all read the groundbreaking study, "The Greenest Building, Quantifying the Value of Building Reuse," which concludes that when comparing buildings of equivalent size and function, building reuse almost always offers environmental savings over demolition and new construction. The report concludes that it can take up to 80 years to make up the environmental impacts of demolishing an old building and constructing the new one, even if the new one is super energy efficient. Collectively, building reuse and retrofit substantially reduce climate change impacts. The bottom line is, reusing existing buildings is good for the economy, it's good for the community, and it is good for the environment. After years of waiting, the time for the Lincoln Hotel is here, right now. Our local landmark is ready to be woven into the Tapestry Collection of Hilton, and you, the City Council, need to make this happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Jeff Cunningham.
Hi, my name is Jeff Cunningham. My address is 2018 Boudreaux Drive in Urbana. I've been a resident in Champaign, Urbana since 1978 when I came up here to go to the University of Illinois. and with the exception of 3 short hiatus, I keep coming back here because it's such a good place to live. I've lived here since then. I grew up in Tuscola. My first memory of the hotel was my parents' 25th wedding anniversary, held in the Great Hall. And I was just stunned. I mean, for a kid from a small town, it was amazing. When my son, excuse me, was old enough, I took him in to the Great Hall. I took him into the lobby to see the bear and to show him what a classic hotel was like. When the Landmark opened, my wife and I booked her parents there when they came to town because we wanted to support it. We sincerely wanted it to succeed. But enough is enough. Enough taxpayer money trying to save it, even if it has been paid back. Enough time of the talented city staff coming up with innovative ideas to try to salvage a lost cause. Enough is enough. And there was an article in the paper about Paul Tatman, who's a businessman, a successful businessman, who has the experience and knowledge of what does work on these type of things, and he passed on it. And I think that was, for me, kind of the last straw, because as I said, I sincerely wanted it to succeed. Myself, I use it loosely, a preservationist. My first house I bought for $1 from Cole Hospital in 1982. They were going to build a parking lot, and I had the house moved across Prospect Avenue into Washington Avenue. It was not a good business deal. It was not, but I got a lot of experience on what it took and to take something and try to preserve it. My second house was a Carl rental house on North Kohler, classic 1920s bungalow. At the time, it was unoccupied and dilapidated. Thanks to the agreement the city made with Carl, and when they wanted to extend their campus, they sold the properties back to the community, and we were able to buy it, and we restored it and lived there for 18 years. So on a very small scale, I've got some experience with saving buildings. I love history. I love old buildings. I love living in Urbana. But again, enough is enough. I think the phrase is cutting your losses. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Matt Cho? Matt? Oh, you don't want to talk, but you are in support. Sorry. Support of the hotel. Chris Storr.
Good evening. I'm Chris Storr. I live a block east of here on High Street, and I thought that all of the previous speakers would have pretty much covered anything I would have, except for the, I think I would like to rebut the last speaker. We bought probably the most run-down, worst house in Urbana when we moved here. It was a teardown, plain and simple. And we moved in, or actually we lived in other housing, but gutted that house, stripped it down, and painstakingly restored it. I give you that perspective because the historic Landmark Hotel, the old Urbana Jumers, as many of us remember it, is a icon, a symbol of our town, one of the real jewels building that we all remember. When we brought visitors here from Malawi, we put them up at the Landmark Hotel. When my family came from Ohio last spring, we put them up at the Landmark Hotel so that their children could see what a really fine old hotel looks like. Sure, they stayed at a Holiday Inn, but we wanted them to have that experience of seeing what good architecture and really thoughtful design would look like, and they were impressed even at 8 and 11 years old. So I speak in favor of the restoration. However, like the first speaker, Mr. Marcus, and Gina and others who followed her, I think we need to look at the finances and liability very carefully. I remember the state of Illinois and the unwise financing of the Black Swan Hotel in Collinsville and the still problematic resort down on Lake Shelbyville as examples of projects gone wrong. So with that, I commend us to your good judgment.
Thank you. And the last one I have, unless somebody turns one in pretty soon, is Carolyn Baxley.
Hello. I'm here to speak as a longtime downtown stakeholder and business owner. My husband and I have started acquiring and renovating commercial properties in the late 1980s. We now own 110, 112, 120, 124, 126, and 218 West Main, as well as many nearby properties that house international exchange students. I'm here tonight to speak wholeheartedly in favor of the agreement that's been presented to the city for the redevelopment of the hotel. Since we bought our first downtown building in 1987, we've watched many incarnations of the hotel over the years, many different owners, most of whom did really quite nothing for the hotel. And I think, and Norman thinks, this is the most promising proposal that has been presented to date, and we would like to encourage the city to do whatever is necessary to make this happen. We're hearing some concern about the development because of the bonds that the city would need to issue to be do its part in this project. Since the agreement requires full restoration of the hotel before the bonds are sold, and the hotel would pay a site-specific hotel use tax to allow the city to repay the bonds over their life, the risk to the city seems minimal, and it's far outweighed by the benefits that will follow a fully functioning hotel run by a national chain. When you factor in the added sales tax generated by more shoppers and diners in downtown Urbana, the increase in property taxes, and the tremendous boon this hotel will be to downtown businesses, this agreement seems to be a no-brainer and the very best hope that we've had in a long time to secure the future of our historic hotel, Lincoln Square Mall, and the businesses in downtown. So I encourage you to do this quickly and let's get it open.
Okay, that's it for public input. Next we have some presentations. First will be the...
Bill.
Oh, yeah.
I had
Diane?
one letter from a constituent, and I'm not going to read the whole thing, but there were a couple of questions that he wanted mentioned publicly, and then I'll submit it for the record. Can you do that? This is from Mr. Mark Netter. His one question was he wanted to ask the council how the council decided to renovate the hotel and not replace it. Your answers will help community members decide whether to ask you to support renovation or replacement. He wanted to know how much of the existing building must be gutted to increase the size of the guest rooms and bathrooms to meet the standards that are acceptable to current guests. He said there's been no public discussion on how the up to $9.5 million will be secured or where it will come from. The best protection to Urbana taxpayers would be structuring the $9.5 million as a mortgage loan secured by the usual mortgage lien on the property, or it could be used for equity participation. And then he noted the hotel was opened in 1924, renovated during 1944 to 54, connected to the mall in 64, received an addition in 1982, received a $1.4 million stabilization recently, and it's still not open for business. And he noted it was past time to, it's way past time, we need to carefully study demolishing and replacing the structure with a new and modern hotel building.
Thank you. Anyone else? Dennis?
Yeah. Unfortunately, I left the letters that I had printed out on my printer at home on my kitchen table, but I did get about 6 letters from the community in support of the hotel and 2 that had questions similar to what Diane just mentioned.
Okay, thank you. So our first presentation will be on the Urbana Landmark Hotel. And Libby, did you want to introduce the guests? Okay, thank you.
So we have tonight visitors from the hotel, developers interested in this property, and we'll be hearing from Dianis Rodriguez of Crimson Rock Capital and Bill Walsh of Walsh Associates. We're very excited to introduce this part of the team that will be looking at developing the hotel. And the purpose of tonight's meeting will be to meet the developer, to hear a short presentation which will focus on past projects that they've worked on, as well as their overall vision of the hotel, and some discussion of the Tapestry brand. We know that there's a lot of interest, and folks are very anxious to learn more about the development deal and the details and the city's commitment, and that is these are things that we're working on in great detail with our development advisors. We're getting closer to having something that we can present to the council, and we'll be doing that in coming weeks. So we're finishing up those details, and of course that item is not on the agenda tonight. This is an introduction and a welcome, and just to find out a little more about these folks who've been looking at this property for several months now. So Dianis and Bill, take it away.
Libby, thank you for the introduction, and council members and citizens of Urbana, thank you. We really appreciate your time tonight. We just wanted to give you a brief introduction to the property, what we're thinking, as Libby mentioned. You know, and one of the things that first interested me, I was the first person to find out about the property, was I went online and I noticed, you know, how much discussion there was about the property and how much interest and how important it was to the city. And one of the things that I decided when I went off on my own is that I wanted to work on projects that were interesting, would bring about some element of social value instead of just making money, and would have some level of transformation, meaning bringing about positive good to society. So I'm really happy to hear that folks are interested in the project, whether it's for against or for the project. I think those discussions are very positive, so thank you. The Urbana Landmark Hotel, you guys know it much better than we do, but we think it's a beautiful historic building. It's very interesting, it's unique. It has a fantastic history, built by a legendary architect, and we believe that it has the capability of being transformed into a leading 3- to 4-star hotel. And by the way, just as a general just context, we were told we have about 10 minutes. We have a very long presentation, so I'm going to go through it very quickly. The reason why we're pursuing the project is because we do believe that it will be a major catalyst for the revitalization of the city, where a lot of the students can come to the downtown, where locals can spend a lot more time in Urbana and bring tourism to the city. You know, as I've spent some time in the city or outside, you know, I've heard a lot of students say we never go to Urbana, we go to Champaign or we go to Campus Town. Well, we certainly want to change that, and we want to create an opportunity for tourists to come and experience what you guys have to offer here. We also believe that the project will increase employment during and after the renovation, and we really want to preserve what we believe is a beautiful piece of architecture. And obviously, we also would like to provide compelling returns for our investors, which is the only reason that we can pursue the project. So we think this building is very interesting, not only because of the architecture, but it sits on a plot of land where there was another hotel where we understand Lincoln used to stay. So we really like the affiliation with Lincoln, the history. We like the fact that it was built by 100 local businessmen for the city. They wanted to create a landmark. We like the historical nature of the hotel, the legendary architect, the affiliation with the university, which it had from its beginning. We would like to bring that back. And we like the fact that it's a national landmark listed on the Register of Historic Places. And we think that we have an opportunity to bring back that iconic history. So they're basically right now, on the right-hand side, you see what the hotel used to look like. This is before the mall was completed. And when we think of the property, in my head at least, I think of Beauty and the Beast. The reason for that is, at one point, it was a very attractive building that the mall was built in front of it, so now you only see the back. So it's sort of a beast right now, but we think that we have the opportunity to bring it back to enhance its beautiful features and bring it back to what it was before. And in this presentation, what we say is, don't judge a book by its cover. I don't know how many people have gone inside the hotel lately or have spent much time, but when I first saw the property, I was wowed by how beautiful it is. It's very unique. Not that it's not for everyone, but it's unique. It has a lot of integrity, character, and I found it to just be amazing, thinking of, you know, the fact that I could stay at a typical, call it Holiday Inn Express or Holiday Inn, or this very differentiated hotel full of character. And yes, we have executed a term sheet with Hilton for a 20-year agreement. Hilton has toured the property. We've made a presentation before they decided that this project was of interest, and they will conduct a more extensive, what's called a product improvement plan. They're going to come in and tell us what level of renovation, you know, we must do to secure their flag, but they have a very strong interest in a 20-year agreement to transform this asset and to give it national prominence from the Hilton brand. But for us, what we really like about Tapestry and what we think is a great fit is that it'll allow us to allow the hotel to be distinctive and to be true to itself, in addition to having a national brand. And we do like the Lincoln brand. So in addition, like I said, to the hotel, we want to build, we want to transform the property into a hotel that has character, uniqueness, integrity, stature, and an iconic history. And to me, that's just the manifestation of Abraham Lincoln. Many people probably thought Lincoln wasn't the best looking guy, but I think that, you know, he espouses, you know, great character. He's an icon. He's someone that a lot of people look up to. And I think that that's what the hotel represents to me when I think about the theme. And it'll draw a lot of people here to come and see what this Abraham Lincoln Hotel is like. So here to the left, you have what the hotel looks like now. To the right, these are not actual photos of the hotel post-renovation, but more a representation of the transformation that we expect to conduct to the inside of the property. And Bill will tell us a little more about the renovation.
Hi, I'm Bill Walsh, and I will be the project manager, construction manager. This is my budget that I put together, showing your major categories on a hotel renovation, construction, FF&E, which stands for furnishings, fixtures, and equipment. Soft costs are your design fees and permits and other costs. And I'm the one who came up with that preliminary budget.
And just one thing that we want to say. I mean, one of the things that we decided before, you know, making a final decision to be involved is that we had to do it right. So it had to be a major catalyst. So that's why these numbers are so big. I mean, if we go and spend half of this or just go and do, you know, a minor renovation, we wouldn't create, you know, a catalyst in the downtown Urbana area. So that's if we don't do that, we just don't want to be involved. We realize that these are big numbers, but we also believe that it's going to have a major catalytic impact and return, you know, the money, you know, in many ways, not only by increasing the tax base and the multiplier effect to the society, but also the public good and the nostalgic elements that people have towards the property. This is our team here. So Walsh Associates is Bill Walsh. I'm Crimson Rock Capital. We're the general partner. The project manager will be Walsh Associates. The architect is Campo Architects, and the hotel manager will be Newcastle Hotels. We'll tell you a little more about all of us in future slides. First, a little bit about Crimson Rock Capital. The company was founded by me in 2014, and as I mentioned before, we seek interesting projects. We only focus on projects that need a major renovation or where there's either an asset repositioning or a neighborhood transformation. In this specific situation, we have the opportunity to do both, which we find very interesting.
Yeah, so Walsh Associates. So I've been doing hotel design and construction for over 30 years. I had my own firm for 25 years, I think, and we've done approximately 150 hotel renovation projects. Obviously, all of them weren't as extensive and major as this, or I'd be dead by now. But some of them have been like this. And we'll show you some slides, but there's the Algonquin Hotel, a 100-year-old property at Times Square that we did. To the bottom right is the Westin in Nova Scotia, which is also a historic project, and we did a historic hotel. We did 2 or 3 projects there. And there's no particular reason why that Sofitel is up there. It was a modern hotel, and we built an addition to it, but there you go.
The hotel operator is expected to be Newcastle Hotels. They have a 30-year history. They manage over 20 properties. They've managed over 70. They are an approved operator of Marriott, Hilton, and Starwood, which means that they do a really good job. Otherwise, they wouldn't be allowed to manage a Hilton Tapestry.
Yeah, so the architect that we're proposing is John Campo. I recently finished a project with John in New Orleans, also a historic renovation. The client in this case was Newcastle Hotels. Dionys was a part of that project. They are a hotel architect, and they specialize in historic renovations. He is absolutely a perfect fit for this job. In the center of the slide there is the Pere Marquette in Peoria. I did not work on that, but that's the project that he did, and it won an Illinois award, I think #2 in the state for historic renovations. Just recently, he was proud to email me about, and he's done a ton of historic hotel renovations.
So we're going to speak a little bit about our experience, some that we think are relevant to what we're trying to do here.
Yeah, so that's the hotel we just opened. We got our certificate of occupancy today in New Orleans. That's a Marriott hotel. That's a 100-year-old building. It was an historic building. We got historic tax credits on that building. Just to put things into perspective, the construction cost on that, and it was not nearly as extensive as what we're talking about for the Landmark. The construction cost alone there was approximately $65,000 a key, to put things into perspective, closer to $70,000 a key. So I mean, it was a major job, but it was an existing operating hotel. In fact, somebody here spent the night there a few years ago. There you did, Charlie did, a few years ago. So it was an operating hotel. It was in decent condition, and we still spent $70,000 a room on it. And the Landmark isn't operating, isn't as good in condition. And the fact that it's shuttered down is concerning, and it's getting worse every single day.
And when Bill says $70,000 $100,000 per room. He's comparing that to $85,000 per room that we have for our property, which is not a going concern today and hasn't had a real renovation probably since the mid-'80s, meaning a complete renovation. And I also want to point out in this slide, the entire execution team of the Urbana Landmark Hotel worked on it. So Crimson Rock Capital, Newcastle, Walsh Associates, and Campo Architects as well. This is a before and after. The before photos are above, the after are below.
That's the Algonquin Hotel. We mentioned that earlier. Times Square renovation for a very large insurance company, and it was a 100-year-old building. A lot of people have heard of the Algonquin, and we did an extensive renovation on that one also.
Again, before and after the renovation.
We did a $10 million project at the Greenbrier Hotel in White Sulphur Springs, West Virginia. Also, actually a Civil War era hotel.
Before and after?
We did the conversion from, it was a Sofitel, and Mass Mutual asked us to convert it to a Hilton. We did, but that was a more normal standard commercial renovation, which is what most of the industry is. What you have going on here is fairly unique.
Before and after photos.
Again, Weston, another 100-year-old building in Halifax, Nova Scotia. For the client was Newcastle Hotels.
And Bill renovated this one multiple times. I myself also worked at Newcastle, and when he did it in 2002, Newcastle, myself, and Bill Walsh both worked on this renovation. Before and after.
And the Hotel Bethlehem, that was interesting. It was I'm pretty sure it was shuttered right in the downtown of Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, another college town. Lehigh is there. And some local folks, some steel guys from U.S. Steel, or Bethlehem Steel, bought it. They didn't know anything about hotels, and they hired us to, we gut renoed it, and it was, the town has turned around. It was part of the revitalization of the town. And again, it's the Hotel Sofitel. This is a project that Newcastle did. I was not involved in it. They did a $50 million renovation. The province of New Brunswick financed it, is my understanding. And Newcastle did a major renovation on that as equity owner. And so the reason we put it in there is because just to show you that even our hotel manager has experience as an owner doing historic renovations. So all the team, all of us, this is part of what we do.
Before and after, and this is the final one.
Yeah, again, a Newcastle project that they recently did on their own. Well, they had a partner, and they did a $60 million conversion of a of a shuttered building in Portland, Maine, and they converted it into a Westin.
And this one's interesting because this hotel was supposed to be in the wrong side of town, not where the growth was happening. But ever since the project was completed, it's been a major catalyst for the city. So we draw some parallels in terms of the type of impact that we're trying to have here with the renovation of the Urbana Landmark Hotel.
I'd like to add a couple comments to some of the folks that spoke earlier. Someone spoke about historic tax credits, and yes, it is our intent that we would pursue historic tax credits, which means that the State Historic Preservation Officer for Louisiana, for Illinois will be involved and will be a significant factor in determining the scope of renovation, particularly of the Jumers, the exterior of Jumers, and what we're allowed to do at the front entrance, which my dream is to significantly change the front entrance to the building. Well, what's now the front entrance to the building. There's a photo right, well, yeah, you can see how the entrance is blocked by the, well, I find it an unattractive porte-cochere, and that dark breezeway connecting
That's the top left
old building to the Jumers Addition. My experience with SHPO is that they will allow you to do something modern, light, and attractive at the front. They recognize the reality that we want to put a new identity on the building without destroying the historic identity of the building. and we're gonna hope that they'll recognize that the porte cochere is modern, ugly, and could go and help us create a new identity. It seems to me another woman spoke about the Monaco in Chicago, and small world, we renovated that hotel also.
Also wanted to point out, I mean, so Hilton will be highly involved in the renovation just to make sure that the product fits the quality and standards that they want to be involved and associated with. So they'll come in, they'll tell us what we need to do, and they'll make many visits, and they will not approve the opening of the hotel until it fits their standards. So by the time we're done, not only do we have a tremendous amount of experience, and is the process going to be institutional, and even without Hilton, we would do a really good job, because that's what we do, but Hilton will make sure that this is a top quality operation regardless of the cost. Also wanted to point out, like someone said, by the time, if the city decides that it wants to be involved, by the time that the city raises the bond and provides the bond to the developer, we would have to open the hotel. So we would have to go through the entire process of planning the renovation, investing every single penny, and effectively performing before you guys participate. We think that that's a very important part of the analysis that should go into the consideration for this project.
17 minutes.
Thank you.
Sorry.
That was a very efficient 10 minutes. Are there any questions? Dennis?
So one of the questions that did come up was, is the size of the rooms currently, which a lot of people consider are small by today's standards, a concern for you, and would you probably be combining rooms, or do you think that for a historic building these rooms actually are suitable or interesting?
Well, that's a good question. We know the size of every single room. They vary from a low here of 201 square feet to, I believe, the biggest is 493 square feet. Well, as construction manager, I would prefer that they stay the size that they are. We'll have to work through that with Hilton. We would have to lay out the furniture in that 201 square foot room and see whether it would survive or not. Right now, I have it designated as a single queen. I've laid out the dimensions in that room. I think it works as a single queen, but Hilton will have to sign off on that. In my world, it's ideal if it stays where it is, and it's a single queen. The big rooms that are almost 500 feet, again, you can split them in half. Now you're building a whole new bathroom, which is problematic because they don't stack. So I would prefer that it be sold as a 2-bedroom.
So I know that I've slept in what I thought was a closet in New York City once.
Yes.
How
was that?
Convenient.
New York City.
So I wondered, when we were discussing earlier this afternoon, you said that the different sizes of rooms would actually offer different price points for people who wanted to stay at the hotel. Could you explain that?
Yeah, I can explain that. So basically, there are many different price points. You have some very large rooms here, suites. You have standard size rooms, and then you have some small rooms. So what we would do is, based on the size of the room, there will be a pricing associated with it. In my experience, in my association with another New York City property, what tends to happen is that the smaller rooms are a lot more affordable, so people tend to book those. Because most of the population, they want to be cautious with how they spend money. They don't typically spend too much time in the room, so they rather spend $100 and be able to make the trip and have good food and travel versus just being so fixated on the fact that the room has to be massive.
I mean, you've got a good mix of sizes here. 332, 290, 290, 290, 290, 300. So, I'm not in. You've got some small rooms, but you've got a lot of rooms here at the bulk. Well, the Jumers edition are all 300 square feet, which is completely fine, completely acceptable. So, and then in the historic wing, you got lots of odd sizes. It is what it is.
And some of these new brands, lifestyle brands, boutique type brands from Hilton, Marriott, Starwood, some of the main ones. They understand that these are historic buildings and the size are what they are. So it's not unrealistic for you to go into New York City or another city and stay at a room that is very, very small. They know it. It makes the product more unique, and what is being created here is a differentiated experience versus a Hilton Garden Inn room that has to be a very specific size. So if we were doing a Courtyard or Hilton Garden Inn room here, we can guarantee you that room would not be approved by Hilton. But in this situation with Tapestry, we don't have concerns.
Can I do one more?
Diane has one.
Um, the renovation budget has been around for about a year and a half, but your agreement with Hilton is very, very recent. Are you confident that your budget is going to be adequate to cover whatever standards and quality that Hilton is
I'm not
going
so
to require?
concerned about Hilton standards. I'm more concerned about what's going on inside that building right now.
In that you don't know?
Mm-hmm. And one of the things, it's going to take a few $100,000 of our time and money prior to closing to make sure we climb deeper and deeper into that building. But it's a little bit of the chicken and the egg, some sense of the development agreement before we invest that money.
Do you do that before you sign the development agreement? Just curious how that all.
We wouldn't. I mean, first of all, we need to know that there's a viable project before we spend $300,000, $400,000, $500,000. We've already spent a significant amount. Probably a couple $100,000 or so. So I mean, we're committed to this project. We think it's a fantastic project, and we want to get it done. But we would like to know if there is a project.
Right.
Yeah. But just to answer your question, we were very thoughtful in terms of how we created the budget, and we were thinking Hilton Curio or similar when we put together the budget. So not expecting to get it, but that already assumed that we were going to get to a 3-4 star level property. Hilton with this specific brand, it's more lenient. So in other property types, like an autograph collection, for example, they'll tell you exactly what you need to do. Here, what they'll do is they certainly have very specific standards, and you have to be at a specific level, but they'll give you a little more of an artistic license.
Okay. One more question. Can you explain how the tax credits work? The historic tax credits.
Sure. The SHPO, the State Historic Preservation Officer, walks through the project and determines the historic elements that need to be preserved in order to obtain those credits. Then the architect submits plans that show the project, and SHPO reviews them to see whether you have preserved those elements or not. Those elements can be on the exterior, they can be on the interior. They're historic elements. A tile, mosaic tile on a floor in front of an elevator that's 100 years old, they can say no matter what, you save that tile floor, for example. And then you submit the drawings that show what you're going to do and how you're going to preserve those elements. And then SHPO says, okay, if you do that, then we will allow you to achieve these credits. Then there's a whole complicated process of, how do I summarize this really quickly? Then a portion of your project is deemed qualifying reimbursable expense. Construction cost, certain professional design fees, by and large, let's say those are the two general big classifications of money, are deemed a qualifying reimbursable expense. You don't have state credits here in Illinois, but you have federal credits. And the National Park Service, who issues those federal credits, relies heavily on SHPO, their local representative. So then after that, when you complete the project, they will issue a certification that you did what you said you were going to do, you did what you told them you were going to do, and then they issue the tax credits. And those tax credits can be sold, they can be borrowed against, they can be sold in advance, or if the owner has a big pocket and pays lots of taxes, the owner can keep those credits and use them. They are tax credits to offset his own personal income tax. Unfortunately, that's not my situation. So the tax credits are used, most commonly they are sold, and there are investors who buy the tax credits. So if you were to owe the government, I don't know, pick a number, $100,000 in credits on your taxes, and you had purchased $100,000 worth of credits for $90,000, you've saved yourself $10,000. So that's how the tax credits work. The tax credits are completely designed to stimulate people to undertake historic projects that otherwise are not achievable. It's just another way of stimulating historic preservation. And New Orleans is on fire right now because there are federal credits and state credits. And up until recently, there are both 20% state credits and 20% federal credits. So the reason New Orleans has preserved all these historic buildings and the reason New Orleans looks the way it does is because of historic tax credits. Otherwise, they'd be bulldozed. It just doesn't make sense. It's the most complicated, well, I don't know, maybe a nuclear power plant is more complicated, but an historic renovation is probably one of the most complicated projects you can undertake.
I think Bill says something really interesting that I just want to stress, because I for my firm and another firm, invested heavily in New Orleans, and the key reason for us going there were the historic tax credits. So effectively what happened is that New Orleans, you know, after Katrina was destroyed, as you guys know, but historic tax credits, the state and the federal, and some other incentives like film, you folks may have seen that a lot of movies were being done in New Orleans, but effectively they created a way to massively catalyze and recreate this city that is now unique, and you know, the visitation there is through the roof. It's so interesting. You know, everyone, you know, not everyone, but a lot of people, a lot more than even pre-Katrina, now go to New Orleans because it was able to basically rebuild itself on the basis of these incentives.
Thank you.
Charlie, then Eric.
Yeah. So, quick question here. One of the questions people are asking is how much of the room gets gutted? Do you expand the bathroom a little bit, or is
It's
it?
not my intent. My hope is to work out a design with Hilton that would preserve the bathroom. Expanding bathrooms is very, very expensive. They're small. They're going to make us model it. We'll build a model, but I think using very nice finishes, getting rid of the bathtubs, they're a goner, converting to walk-in showers, small. The Algonquin had small walk-in showers, but we spent probably, I don't know, north of 10 grand a bathroom, believe it or not. And this is on production. This isn't just your home. This is production when you're doing 100 or 150 of them, or in Algonquin, 200 of them. You spend 15 grand a bathroom, you can do a pretty nice job with extremely nice finishes, nice glass, nice marble, and it's small. That's what I would try to achieve, because it becomes problematic, particularly when you try to expand a bathroom in a 200 square foot room. I'm not sure where you're going.
Thank you.
Eric?
So I'll ask you a question I asked this afternoon and told you I would ask in public again. The in context is that national average for hotel renovation in this you know, sort of this
Sure.
level of upscaleness is about $40,000 a key.
Yeah.
But you're about $160,000
Yeah,
a key.
yeah.
So maybe you can explain why
Yeah.
this is so much more.
Yes, as I said, we've done about 150 projects, and 100 of them were probably projects like, or well, even higher, 125 of them were the projects like you described. I mean, your normal project, it's I don't know, 1980s hotel. It seems like that's when they were all built, 1970s, 1980s. Marriott, Hilton. And it's paint, carpet, vinyl. Maybe you change the bathrooms a little bit. Maybe you tear out the tubs and convert to showers. But you know, you're not gutting your HVAC system. You're not tearing the P-tax out of the walls, putting in a 4-pipe system. You're not changing risers. This is a completely different animal than than most of the projects that we do and most of the projects in the United States. It's just no comparison.
Yeah, I'll add something to that real quick. So what you're talking about is a study that HVS International does. I used to work for them. It's a cost survey. So effectively what they do is they take a lot of data from different geographies of primarily branded hotels. So they'll create a range from, call it $20,000 to $50,000 renovation per room. But there's no category for historic renovation. Hopefully that's something that they'll do over the next few years, because it's really popular these days. All the brands want to renovate these types of properties. And then you'll see that the renovation number would drastically increase, because there's a lot more construction and work and heavy lifting on a historic renovation than just a plain vanilla commodity box.
So if I could follow up, and I didn't ask you this afternoon because I didn't think of it. In your opinion, is can the hotel be made viable with a less extensive project, or is this absolutely what's required?
Well, look, that's a really good question, right? As an investor, we could probably make a lot more money by doing a much smaller renovation, $2, $3, $4 million, right? And then, we'll make a lot more money on an IRR perspective, but that's not what you guys need. So, you know, we can come and do that, but that's not what you need. That's not what you're looking for, and that's not why we're coming to this town. So we think that to do it right, first you need a flag. We weren't sure we were going to get one. Now we have what we think is a fantastic fit, and then you need to do something special so that folks that are coming to the greater area will find, you know, an interesting hotel, a unique with great F&B, etc., where they'll be proud to come, and for the citizens to be proud to go and spend time on. So do you need to do a major renovation to make money? No. Do you need to do a major renovation for it to have a major catalytic impact on the city? Yes.
Well, you won't get a Hilton flag with a $3 million renovation either, and I'm not going to be involved in a $3 million renovation. I don't have anything to do with it, because I just don't think it's going to work.
If I could ask one more question. The package that has been, it actually hasn't come before us, but that we know about, has the city issuing bonds to pay for approximately 45% of the renovation cost, $9 million out of the 20. How common is that for the city just to, you know, kick in that much money in a project like this?
Well, I would. It's probably not super common, but I'll give you two examples. We're looking at a project in Denver, and not too far away from where we're looking, the city has provided $20 million for the renovation of a hotel because it was going to be catalytic. Not too far from there, 10. And so there are examples out there. I think that cities today, because a lot of it, you know, there's a lot of interest in projects like these, and there are major cities out there. There's not as much of a need as there used to be back in the day. So I would say it is not as common today as it used to be, I think, but I'm not an expert in the field.
Mayor Preston?
I was happy to hear you talk about Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, and how transformative that was, because when you first started talking with us about this project, I think we all thought it was going to be transformative for the downtown. And I remember when it was Jumers, I brought some county auditors from around the state to have lunch here for a meeting, and they were wowed by it. And this historically has been just a wow place, and I think it deserves to go back to that, and it will transform Urbana. So thank you very much for your expertise and being interested in our little gem.
Sure.
Dennis?
One of my interests is to hear a little bit about your renovation of the convention center. That's a part of the Jumer addition. It's a pretty big room, and right now it looks really bad. And then also the hotel has a swimming pool in it at the front, and at one time it was an adequate thing, but today it's no longer meets accessibility standards, and there's a lot of issues about that. Could you just briefly tell us what you're thinking about
Yeah,
those two
I answer your
aspects?
second one first. I don't have a fixed answer on the swimming pool. We're going to have to work with Hilton. We're going to have to look with the architect on those accessibility issues. I can tell you that the operator will like to have a pool because why not? They can sell more rooms. What we got to figure out is whether it makes economic sense to change it to meet all those accessibility and life safety codes. I mean, obviously the deck is too small. Regarding the meeting room downstairs in the Jumers Edition, right now our plan is to renovate the meeting room. I don't see any use that I would convert it to. Any other space I'd change it to. So the intent right now is it stays a meeting room. It gets renovated, obviously, like the rest of the hotel.
Mike?
So I'm sorry I wasn't able to meet with you today. My schedule didn't allow it. Running my own small business, trying to generate sales tax for the city of Urbana.
It's a commercial.
I'd like to go back to the whole idea of what this deal is costing per room, per key in your
Yes, sir.
parlance. How does that math work? Can you walk me through that as a business person and walk everyone through that at $160,000 per key? How many rooms do you need to
Well, I
sell?
see.
What's your occupancy rate? I mean, how does that all flesh out? And I apologize that I
No.
haven't been able to meet with you and study up on this, but I think it would be instructive for everyone to understand that out loud here in the room.
Yeah, I mean, so it's 146,000 per room, and in terms of how, I'm not exactly sure I understand the question, but I don't think I would be able to answer your question just.
How do you make money?
Off the top of my head.
How about that?
Well, as I said before, we need to do a major renovation. If we were able to generate enough funds through just the hotel without needing the city's incentives, we wouldn't be sitting here right now. So we need to do a major renovation so that it can be a catalytic and a successful property where people will come here for business, for pleasure, for meetings, where citizens can go and have a meal or a drink, where students can hang out, where you can create, a bastion of dynamism. And $146,000 per room is a lot of money. We think that is what it is required. If we were just to do that without any of your help, we would not make a penny. So yes, we're sitting here today because we need assistance and support from the city of Urbana so that we can come here and create an asset, transform an asset to the benefit of all stakeholders involved, including us.
Right. So I guess what I'm asking, and I'm in the restaurant business, so I probably don't know your parlance, but I guess what I'm trying to understand here is, and I'm not even at this point debating whether the city helps or not. Let's just assume under your plan the city helps with every dollar you need. How does it work? What is your occupancy rate? Over how many years? What does your average room rental rate need to be? What are those numbers? I mean, clearly you're going to have some kind of pro forma that makes it work for your investors, or your investors are not going to be in, right? So what are those numbers?
Yeah, we've actually submitted numbers in a pro forma, but and we'll be submitting a new pro forma, assuming a Hilton Tapestry, so that you can look through everything and you'll be able to answer questions.
Okay.
But effectively, I mean, we're just using market rate assumptions. How are other hotels in the market performing from an occupancy and rate perspective? We're asking our operators to, how would you operate this? What are your costs going to be?
Mm-hmm.
And then we're just arriving at a net operating income on the basis of all of that analysis. Then we take, the costs, et cetera. And does that answer your question?
We're getting there a little bit.
Okay.
I think
Slowly.
he's asking for rate and occupancy.
Well, yeah, I mean, that would be helpful to understand how this works, I mean, the way I have to go into a banker and say I can sell this many tables at this average rate per day or per year, will you loan me money? You obviously have investors, and you have to meet their confidence in getting them to back your deal. So you're asking the city of Urbana for $9.5 million, and for a community of this size, that is a sizable chunk of change. So I think what I'm after here is, what's the business plan? How does it make money? And do you have comparable hotels at 100 and, what was the last number? I've heard 160, I've heard 145.
146 is right there on the screen.
146, there we go. Okay, sorry. I took off my cheaters, so I can't read that anymore. So, okay, 146,000. Are there other hotels that are operating today that are afloat, making money at 146,000 per room in a similar circumstance?
I mean, so every single jurisdiction that you go to is going to have different occupancy and rate, right? So it's apples to oranges. But I mean, if you go and renovate a property like this in New York, it'll probably cost you twice as much or more. It all depends on where you go.
Right.
So, but what we did in terms of the process, and you will get a pro forma that shows occupancy and rate. As a matter of fact, I think Libby and the city have hired, consultants, third parties, to go through our analysis to make sure that what we're proposing, in fact, makes sense from looking at the market.
Okay.
So because it have to. I mean, we can't sit here and ask you guys to make an investment that doesn't make sense and won't give you a return of your investment. So that analysis has been done. I think it needs to be updated to reflect the tapestry. We need to provide a third pro forma. We've provided 2, and we've also provided market information. It's a very fair question. That is being done. All of our numbers assume market. Even we're basically performing at market, and market is how other properties in the city are doing.
Have you had any of these projects go south on you?
I haven't. That doesn't mean that they don't go south, but I mean, I've been on this one.
I've had a business go south, so it's okay.
Yeah,
I'm just wondering.
Yeah, so I've been on this property 2 years. If we thought that it would go south, we wouldn't do it. We can't predict the future. We tend to be maybe a little more conservative. We want to eliminate all possible risk, hence the Hilton flag, hence having a team of professionals that have done this a lot. So while I haven't, it doesn't mean that these projects don't go south. I'm sure they do, but we've done an extensive amount of due diligence, and that we have a great team, we have a great flag, and an experienced operator to minimize that happening.
Mm-hmm. Well, I have to tell you, I was really not much interested at all, and this is no offense to you folks, until you had a Hilton flag. But do you honestly have a Hilton flag? What is the? I mean, I shouldn't put it that way. You've kind of outlined the steps that you have to take to get the Hilton flag, but are you 100% confident that you can get that flag if this deal comes to fruition and you guys do what you do?
I mean, I don't think anyone can say that they can be 100% confident of anything, right? I mean, Hilton needs to go through their process. They need to approve it. What do I think? Do I think we're going to get it? Yes. So why do I think that? Hilton came. They did a tour. We did a presentation to Hilton. They voluntarily provided us with a term sheet that has been executed for a 20-year franchise agreement. Now, there are other steps. I asked that same question you're asking me because I wanted to feel, we're spending money. Like every month we're spending money, so we also have to make sure that we're doing the right thing for ourselves and our investors. I asked the question, how often, at this point in the process, does it not get approved? And the answer that I've heard is almost never, right? But I cannot stand here or sit here and say I can guarantee you guys that we're going to get a Hilton flag. Do I think it's going to happen? Yes. And are we spending time and money because we think it's going to happen? Absolutely.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Aaron and Eric, but Aaron likes to get the last word, so I don't know. Actually,
would you like the last word?
I have a couple questions, so I think
Well, you go right ahead.
I'll ask mine. Do you want to be chair while I ask my questions? Okay.
Taking the chair, I recognize Bill Brown. Do you have some questions, sir?
Yeah, just a couple. So I think you guys have shown that you can do great work, and I'm impressed with the quality of your work and everything. The challenge is going to be to help us get through the process of getting enough performance guarantees and making sure that we can raise the money and have some assurance that it'll come back to us, and hopefully not over the entire 20-year period, which is what it looks like currently. So that's kind of my first question is do everything you can to help us creatively come up with those performance guarantees and something that'd be acceptable to your investors. Even if we can't get an equity position, maybe there's some sort of ownership option or something that would work. There may be creative ways of, we talked about the Algonquin up in New Brunswick, where they actually own the property, the land. Maybe something like that, where we would own the land. You could deed us the land, and we would lease it to you, or something. If something like that would work out for your investors, just something creative that we would be able to guarantee performance. And so the other thing is how many rooms are actually in the new part versus the old part?
I can tell you exactly. For purposes of this discussion, it looks like it's approximately 50-50.
Okay. So the old part has about 112 rooms or something, or the new part does. So that actually is an 80s hotel. You're talking about $40,000, $60,000 renovation costs. So that basically could apply to that portion. Is that right?
Hopefully it won't be as expensive as the older portion, but it does have a facade that is going to be a gift that keeps on giving.
And definitely needs some heating and air conditioning work and things like that.
Yeah, those normal numbers that Eric was talking about don't include gutting and replacing an entire HVAC system.
Yeah.
That is not your normal renovation.
Right.
That's on the edges of the bell curve, as we say.
You said you'd done some renovations multiple times. What's the average lifetime of a renovation?
Well, that's a good question. In terms of furnishings, the target for most of your hotel chains for the guest room furnishings, the stuff you sit on, walk on, sleep on, is 7 to 10 years. What we call the case goods, the hard furniture, dressers and things like that will go 15. There is no standard for really gutting bathrooms, replacing risers, putting in a new HVAC system. I mean, it's just not in their standard operating system.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And then I know you worked for Newcastle before you started your own company.
I did,
right?
yes.
So you've had a long history with them. The type of companies that would work with Newcastle like you're doing now, I'm trying to find a good way to ask this, because I know you probably don't have a lot of properties yet, and you wouldn't know how long you tend to hold on to them. So my question is, the type of companies that you represent now, how long would they typically hold on to a property?
I mean, so the analysis that most firms do is a 5-year analysis, right? That doesn't mean that they'll hold it. They do a 5 or a 10. Lately, it's more like a 5-year analysis. It doesn't mean that they'll hold it for 5. It could be less. It could be more. So it all depends on how the market is doing. Sometimes it doesn't make sense to sell, or it does, based on how depressed or exciting the market is. At the end of the day, the investment is being made to deliver strong returns for investors. But to do that, you have to do a really good job and think long term. You can't do a poor job. Otherwise, you're effectively killing your end value, which is why here we are opting to do some things that are a lot more expensive to transform the asset to make sure we can get the right flags, such as replacing the HVAC system, right? And as Bill said, there is no norm. I mean, but that doesn't normally happen. It would have to be a really old property, and what we're trying to do there is create an experience that is suitable to guests, so that you can generate more income and obviously attract a stronger flag, which means that you can sell for a higher valuation whenever you do decide to sell. But what you would have here in terms of longevity is a 20-year Hilton franchise, and Hilton will tell you when a renovation is needed, or they will take your flag from you. And they will do many tours before the property is allowed to open as a Hilton Tapestry to make sure that the brand quality is there and the standards are there. Not only that, but not only do they focus on the physical asset themselves, but they also focus on the operations and how well or how poorly the hotel operator is delivering the service. Because at the end of the day, what they care the most about is their brand, which is measured in the forms of guest reviews and performance measurements by many members of the Hilton family. So it's really done. I mean, when we do anything like this, we do it for the long term. Whether we're in there for 5 years or 10 years, you still get a solid quality product.
Just one more. In the performa that that we saw last year, there was a small amount that was like dedicated every year to set aside for future renovations, basically.
Yeah, it's called FF&E Reserve.
Reserve, okay.
Yeah.
Is that percentage sufficient? I've seen some indication online that there's some debate about whether that's actually enough.
Sure, you probably saw 3%. Is that what you?
Yeah, and is there a way that?
Yeah, 2,
is
3,
there a
4.
way that we could guarantee that that's being put aside over the entire life of our bond if we so bonded?
Well, the bank will. The bank. So the other, not only do you have Hilton that's going to require certain brand standards, but the bank is going to have someone looking over our shoulders to make sure that the quality is up to par, and they will require certain amounts being put away, probably 4% every year, called an FF&E reserve, to ensure that the economic viability of the product is maintained throughout the term of their loan. So you'll have many folks paying attention to quality. Not only us, we want the absolute best quality because that's how you generate returns. The bank wants the absolute best quality to make sure they get their money back. Hilton wants the absolute best quality to make sure that folks are happy and they keep staying at Hilton hotels.
Yeah, it's basically a miserable business.
Mr. Wash, do you think 4%'s enough?
I mean,
it's enough on a new hotel.
Yeah.
It's enough on a brand new renovated hotel. But if you put $4 million into this and said we're going to renovate it in 5 years with 4%, I'd say nice try.
Okay, thank you all.
Okay, and I'm assuming you take the chair
I'll
back.
take the chair back. Thank you. Who wants to go first? Eric.
So, first of all, I want to say that I'm totally impressed with you guys and the work you do. My only concerns are whether the financials work for us. And we haven't really had, as a council, a discussion on this until right now. So I apologize for raising some sort of deep issues about this. But so for the project to work for you, you have to get a return on your $5.5 million that you're going to pay for the hotel, plus the, I guess, $9.5 million that you're going to put into the renovation. So 5.5. Okay, so about $15 million. For the project to work for us, there has to be a tax stream generated by the hotel that is sufficient to pay off the bonds. So one could imagine an alternative financing, and let me ask you if this is ridiculous or if it's something, the kind of thing people do. We could instead of issuing bonds, we could turn over that revenue stream as tax rebates. Is that something that people do sometimes? Is it a reasonable option to consider?
Yeah, I mean, that's how it's normally done, right? I mean, that's how TIF financings are normally done. Unfortunately, in this situation, if you do that, it's just that the project just doesn't work.
Because? Because
then you are paying off the city's contribution over, a 10 or 20 year period. So
right.
Just from a time value of money perspective, it wouldn't come anywhere near the returns required for this project to get done.
Okay, so for the project to work, we have to take the 20-year pay out as opposed to you?
Well, I think it all depends on how you look at it, right? I mean, if we don't spend, the $15 million, then really the money is coming from the incremental tax base created by the renovation, right? Or it should, for it to work.
Right.
And you're right. I mean, I think you guys need to sit down and deliberate. I mean, I think you all have some really valid concerns. Michael also had some really good questions. You need to sit down and make sure that works. But if it does work, what that means is that we were able to create enough enough of an increment in the tax base, and hopefully in other, catalytic impacts throughout the neighborhood to justify the city's contribution. Otherwise, it doesn't work.
So can you point us towards, I mean, I guess what I'm groping for, because I haven't yet seen a really good analysis of this, of how the returns come to us. We've got some rough numbers, but I guess I'd love to have more firmly based numbers. And a place where those could come would be from projects that have been successfully created and have increased tax base in their cities. Probably not in public tonight, but if you can point us to any, resources like that where we could really have a very, very solid, the most solid possible. I realize the future can't be predicted, but the most solid possible projections of the incremental revenue stream that we can expect from the existence of the hotel, that would be great.
Yeah, I mean, we can do that. The way that we're doing that is we're going to provide you with a pro forma. So right now, the hotel is closed, so it generates very minimal taxes. You guys and your consultants will take our pro formas and we'll say, well, this makes sense or it doesn't. I think we're really good at what we do. We've never gone through the process of doing what you're saying. We're happy to do some research and try to find some examples and share them with you. Yeah. But I would encourage you guys to do the same. But we're happy to help, in any way that we can. I just want to say that that's not in our line of expertise.
It's not your business, right? But the expertise should exist out there. Yeah.
I think so. I think there are probably a lot more examples that we would know of. I mean, like I said, I know of some in Denver. In New Orleans, it's historic tax credits is just another way to look at it. They also have to be paid back. Yeah. But there are many examples that if we put our heads together, I'm sure we can find plenty of examples to show, one, that the catalyst can work, and two, that it can pay for itself.
But speaking of New Orleans, we're probably not going to invite Haraz in here.
Okay, Miss Aaron.
Yeah, so thank you all for your patience, professionalism, and your presentation. I thought I heard you say earlier that maybe within the presentation that I was privy to earlier today, that it was going to be detached from the mall when you were done. That was one of the questions. So it will not be detached from the mall.
No. Okay. No, we have no affiliation with the mall whatsoever. Our intent is for this renovation and investment to be a catalyst without having anything to do with the mall. But what we think it'll do is it'll have a favorable impact on everything around the hotel, including the mall.
And I know we spoke earlier about the importance of workforce goals. I know you and Libby and Brandon are going to work on some things about making sure people, minority participation numbers are there from a development standpoint as well as workforce. So those are some of the things that we talked about, and people have asked me about that, so I want to ask my questions publicly as well, some of the ones that I asked you guys in the meeting earlier today. I'm actually just kind of still soaking it in. I know we have to look at some of the financial numbers and stuff, but I think you've done a wonderful job with the presentation and answering most of the questions. If you can get Mike Madigan to back down a little bit, then you've probably done a good job.
Mike asked some really good questions, and we welcome all questions, so thank you, Mike.
And I'm sure there'll be other things that will come up, but I don't have a lot of questions at this particular point.
I do.
Okay, Mayor Presson.
Just a quick question. On the conference part of the building, how many people does that accommodate for conferences?
I don't know off the top of my head, but if, whatever it theoretically would do today, if it was open, is what it would theoretically do tomorrow. but I don't have a seating chart in front of me. I don't know the capacity.
Okay, thank
Yeah,
you.
I don't know the answer either, but I mean, there's 6,000 square feet, and we believe that the product is very differentiated and will be, you know, the go-to place for corporate and leisure weddings. And, you know, can you imagine a wedding in this historic, iconic hotel? It would be fantastic.
Okay, thank you.
Diane?
I'm just looking at your construction budget here, and the last line item is permits, fees, et cetera, for over $2 million. Are those payments to the city?
You know, I hope I don't have to give you $2 million.
We hope you do.
Well, or that's a negotiation.
You know, that's a
point
good.
there. Where's that number coming
Yeah, you know, I did a 2-page budget for Dionis, and he summarized it. So I don't have a good answer for you, Diane. I'd have to drill down into what line items he rolled up all into there.
Yeah, we tried to put.
Oh, you know what that could be? Is the soft cost maybe financing, and then that's all my.
Yeah,
I
interest.
think the way Dionis took my budget's, like I said, 2 pages long, and then he rolled it all up. I think what he's done is he's called financing soft cost. Mine would be permits and professional fees. So that'd be all your consultants. The permits is a relatively minor part of it.
So it's the consultants.
Yeah, it's mostly the
Okay.
consultants. And you got a slew of them on this.
Okay.
I think we're done. Eric, do you really have another question?
This is, no, yes, I do. So I was this afternoon when we talked, it seemed as though you were not fully committed to creating a full 3-meal restaurant. And I think that our projections for, taxes were assuming that there would be. So anyway, that's important. I guess I'll just say I think that's important to us.
So it's important for us as well. I mean, I think I was trying to best answer your question, and what I meant to say is we haven't gone through the full planning process and completed our planning for what the F&B concept is going to be. I mean, we want it to be really special to draw as many people as we can. We do expect that it's going to be a 3-meal-a-day restaurant, but we have not, completed the planning. We want to engage some consultants. We want to hear some ideas. We just want to open it up to see what is the best concept that we can create there. We expect that it's going to be a 3-meal-a-day restaurant.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you all. We appreciate your time.
Okay, the next presentation will be First Followers, and Aaron Ammons will introduce the gentleman.
So I would like to welcome, I believe, Marlon Mitchell and I believe James Kilgore would do the presentation for the First Followers. I asked these gentlemen to come and to bring First Followers to do a presentation to the Urbana City Council because I know of their work firsthand. James Kilgore and Marlon and I worked together on Citizens with Conviction when we worked on the Ban the Box initiative here in the city of Urbana, and they have subsequently moved on to establish First Followers as a 501c3 reentry program, and they have some amazing people with them that I know, many of them personally, like Tammy and Kevin and Tamika and Cassandis and so many. And I'm deeply moved by the stories of people like Bethany and others. And so First Followers is a program that they're going to tell you more about it. But when you're dealing with individuals who have firsthand experience like these individuals do, I believe they bring something different to the table than many of the other programs that we have seen thus far who come before us looking for support. Financial support for the work that they do as social service organizations. So I wanted First Followers to come here because, to be frank, there are many times when organizations like this who do work in ways that other people just cannot do because they don't have the firsthand experience. It's groups like First Followers who get left out in the cold when it comes to the finances to actually and the resources necessary to do the work. So I wanted them to come and do a presentation for us tonight around the work that they do. First Followers, Marlon Mitchell and James Kilgore.
All right, thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank you all for allowing us the space to bring what we do and what we hold as a passion to the floor. My name is Marlon Mitchell. I'm a PhD student at the University of Illinois. I'm in my 3rd year, but I am also a long-standing resident of Champaign County. So just a brief snippet about what First Followers is and what we do. As Aaron mentioned, we're a reentry program that started, not-for-profit program that started 2015. So we're still in our startup infancy phase, but we've done a lot in this little snapshot of time that we've been together. So one of the things that we pride ourselves, and I think Perry Klein, who came before the council a little earlier, talked about, was rebuilding community through building community through reentry. And so what exactly does that mean? So one of the unique things about First Followers is that we like to consider ourselves as a grassroots movement, but at the same time, we use those individuals who have been through some things, through those challenges of incarceration or having felony convictions, to do most of the heavy lifting for us. And so one of the things that we came about doing this past May, June, July, and August was what we wanted to call a needs-based assessment. We wanted to have a clear understanding of what was happening here locally when we talk about mass incarceration and reentry. We've heard all the national statistics, we've heard statewide statistics, but we wanted to know how well were we doing as a community here in Champaign County. So with this needs-based assessment, as you can see on your screen, we entitled that Inserting Voices. And if you see that picture there, it kind of inspired me a few years back to start this movement, because 1 in 3 African American males at some point in time will be incarcerated. Me personally, I think that's very unacceptable. I've had my community ravaged, my family ravaged by incarceration, personal friends. So this is something that is really near and dear to me as a citizen of Champaign County. So basically what James and I want to do is just run through this research project, or this needs-based assessment that we did. And as you've seen prior to us getting up here, there's several of us that sit in the audience that have taken this charge and wanting to give back to the community. So we'll start with the slideshow. So what is the problem? So the problem, as we all know, has been well documented with this mass incarceration things that's been going on for 30, 40 years. But as I mentioned, formerly incarcerated people have difficulty reentering to their communities. Unsuccessful reentry can lead to several things here. We hear about the recidivism rate. Here in the state of Illinois, it's over 50%. We hear about the taxpayers' dollars, how this thing has spiraled out of control. And us being in the state of Illinois, we're in a financial crunch as it is. And then also, as I mentioned, families and communities are left to be unstable. And I'm not going to mention the loss of social and human capital that's involved with this. In the state of Illinois, we have over 50,000 individuals that are incarcerated in the Illinois Department of Corrections, 50,000. Champaign County is hovers around about number 9 as far as county rates. So we started with our research question. How well are the needs of previously incarcerated people and their families being met during the reentry process? So that was a question that we took on, the charge that we wanted to understand. So as I mentioned, I'm a PhD student, and one of the things that I do is evaluation work. I've had some of the best world and internationally known professors at the University of Illinois, and one in particular is Dr. Jennifer Green. So one of the things that we learned about is what we call participatory action research. So that was our research methodology. And what does that actually mean? So participatory action research is a research methodology that those who are closest to the problem are closest to the solution, so why not use those individuals to lead the charge? And that's exactly what we did. So as we scoured the country looking for some expertise to get us going in this, we ran across this gentleman named Dr. Yasir Payne. Dr. Yasir Payne is a professor at the University of Delaware. He has led several research participatory action research projects across the nation. He's done something in Brooklyn, New York. He's done some things out in Delaware. He's also, and last time we spoke, he was trying to get up a team to do something down in Ferguson, Missouri. So we consider him an expert. He called in, we did Skype interviews, we did conversation with him and his team, and they kind of gave us orientated us on how to approach this. So then we did our due diligence to search the literature and see exactly what we were up against. So in Champaign County, there's around, on a given year, between 450, 500 people that are on parole. And then these numbers that you see on the screen are coming from Governor Rounder's his report that the commission report that came about in December of last year, 2016. And bullet point number 2, I just want to bring and elucidate exactly what this one has to do. So 2014, 2015, I think we as a state spent $1.4 billion in incarceration. $1.4 billion. And that didn't include staff, salaries, and health care. But out of that $1.4 billion, only 3% went towards programs. And what do we mean by programs? We talk about GED, adult basic education, vocational skill training, different things of that nature. Only 3%, even substance abuse and mental health. Only 3% of the budget, state budget, went towards those programs. Bullet point 4, 50% of the individuals that are incarcerated do not have a high school education or diploma. And most of those read at or lower than a 6th grade reading level. So illiteracy is a common problem with those individuals that have been incarcerated, low literacy rates. Bullet point 4, 25% of the people that are incarcerated are receiving ongoing mental health services. And half of those have been diagnosed needing substance abuse treatment. So going back to bullet point 2 in the programming, and I would like to just highlight this because at some point there's over 95% of the individuals that are incarcerated that are returning homes back to their communities. So you get individuals coming back to our community that are low literacy, substance abuse, mental health issues, all these different things, no education, but they're coming back home to what? So this is one of the charges that we pride ourselves in taking up the flag and pushing forward. You've heard the 2, Perry and Bethany, who came before us. One of the things that we like to do is put a feather in our cap and say, we're gonna educate you, we're gonna motivate you, we're gonna push you. Because without education, there's not much we can do.
Okay, thanks, Marlon. I'm James Kilgore. I'm the co-director of First Followers, and I'm going to talk about some of the findings of the research and our process. I mean, so one of the things in terms of looking at literature that we focused on, in addition to the points that Marlon made, was to explore some of the impact of incarceration on mental health. And people who do research on this have developed a term called post-incarceration syndrome, which is more or less a form of PTSD that impacts people, particularly people who have been incarcerated for long periods of time. And I mean, there's at least 3 factors that contribute to this. One is just the exposure to violence and trauma in prison. And that means, you know, within the population and the institutional violence as well that's directed at individuals. And then secondly, the institutionalization, that is the fact that most of the factors of your daily life are out of your control. When you eat, when you move, when you take a shower, when you can make a phone call, all of these things are set by a program, and it becomes difficult when you come out of prison to figure out how to manage your own time. And then thirdly, of course, there's the isolation, maybe isolation from families, isolation from the community, isolation from developments in technology. We find people coming home after 15 years and they've never seen a cell phone. They've never used a computer, yet they're supposed to be applying for jobs using an online application. So this is one of the things that we've been taking into consideration as we look at our cohort and design our own programs. So in terms of the survey that we did, we put together a survey instrument that had 30 questions. Most of them were 5-point Likert scale. That is, 1 to 5, strongly agree, strongly disagree. And we had a few open-ended questions as well. And these were completed by previously incarcerated people, their families, and some members of the Champaign-Urbana communities at large. We also did some individual interviews with people and some focus groups. But the bulk of our work really was the surveys. We're also putting together some photo voice, taking photos and using some of the quotes from the interviews and so forth to make a different kind of multimedia presentation of the research. Our sampling methods were basically snowball sampling. That is, snowball sampling meaning that you interview someone and they lead you to someone else who's likely to have the kind of experience that we're looking for, because we're primarily trying to target people who have experience of incarceration or have experience of a loved one who's incarcerated, and convenience sampling. So we did convenience sampling by going to places where we thought we would find large numbers of people who had histories of incarceration. We know that there's a great racial disparity, that black people, particularly in Champaign County, are disproportionately incarcerated. At any given time now, about 65 to 70% of the jail population is black people, even though black people only make up 13% of the population. So we went to CU Days, we went to Back to School Explosion, we went to Juneteenth, and we used our own peer mentors to carry out these surveys after doing several training workshops to acquaint them with the research process and survey methodology. So this is our sample. We had 301 Champaign County residents who filled out the survey. 82% were African American, 12% white, 36% had a felony conviction, 38% had been incarcerated, and 81% had a family member or a loved one incarcerated. So the vast majority of the people were the target group that we were looking for in terms of our survey. So once we had the surveys, we had workshops with the peer mentors. We also brought in some PhD students from the University of Illinois to assist us with analyzing the data and trying to make meaning out of the data. So these are photos from some of the workshops that we did using our peer mentors. So to summarize the findings, we had 5 key findings from our research. Obviously there are more than this, but these are the ones we thought were most important. First, 86% agreed that it is difficult for people with a felony conviction to find a job, and 63% strongly agreed. And this, of course, coincided very closely with our own experience of running a drop-in center for 2 years and trying to help people find employment who come through the door. Secondly, 90% agree that employers are suspicious of people with felony convictions. And we've tried to counter that since doing this research by also going out and having meetings with employers and educating them, having discussions with employers. We've visited around 20 employers. We've talked to probably around 50 employers or contacted them in different ways, trying to educate them about the value of employing people with felony convictions and the benefits as well. The third key finding is that 84% agree that incarceration breaks down family relationships. And that's a result of the isolation, a result also sometimes of the financial hardships that the incarceration of a family member imposes on a family, as well as the emotional trauma, particularly on children being raised in the absence of a parent or being raised with a steady pattern of having to visit a parent in prison or only being able to communicate with them through the telephone. Key finding number 4, of those who have been incarcerated, 55% have been refused a job because of their criminal background, 43% have been refused housing. Of course, we know that in the city of Urbana, landlords are not allowed to discriminate against people on the basis of criminal background, but that doesn't always, it's not always followed to the letter of the law. Key finding number 5 is that 85% agree that the county or city should provide transitional housing for individuals returning home after incarceration. I think it's important to note that there's very little by way of transitional housing for people coming home from incarceration in our county, and that's been exacerbated by the closing of shelters, of the Time Center shelter, and of the Salvation Army in the last couple of years.
So what does this all mean? So we came out with several recommendations, 6 of them to be exact. And as we go through these, I just would like for you all just to think about some of these. So first and foremost, provide transitional housing for those returning home from prison. So there's a fact that once you can stabilize a person, the more success that you may have, that you should have. And without the bare minimums of the things that we take for granted as far as housing, employment, different things like that. So that's key finding recommendation number 1. Number 2, provide support programs to families who have loved ones that are or have been incarcerated. 3, conduct a public education campaign aimed at destigmatizing people with felony convictions. So James and I and the group have already started this campaign. So we go in, we actually have sit-down and information gatherings with employers to educate them on some of the benefits of hiring someone with a felony conviction. There's bondings out there where a person gets federal bonds to employ a person with a felony conviction. There's also state tax credits that come along with that as well. Key finding number 4, encourage employers to provide access to employment. So that kind of feeds into what we've been doing with key finding number 3, or recommendation number 3. Allocate funding for workforce and entrepreneurship training. Now, many times, it is what it is. A lot of times it's just very difficult to find access to employment. So why not train individuals who have social capital to start their own? And that's one of the things we really try to push towards, and especially the education piece. I can't stress it enough how important it is to get an education. Key finding number 6, incorporate behavioral health, this meaning substance abuse and mental health abuse or mental health situations, into all aspects of reentry programming. So these are the names of the folks that have actually did the heavy lifting for us. 11 great individuals, and like I said, since we've done this needs-based assessment, other persons have jumped on board. We're starting to get a lot more support in what we do. And a lot of times, what James and I we really like to do is have information to lead us and data to lead us in where we want to go with what we want to do. So with that being said, we're open. Anybody have any questions?
Thank you. Are there any questions? Eric?
I guess I'm really impressed by what you did and your analysis of what you did. Well, I guess this isn't a question I'm going to share. I've got to say a couple of things that you've led me to think. One is that, for example, if prison terms were shorter, or if prison terms were the same length, but the last part was transitional housing instead of in traditional jail or prison, it would be cheaper and probably be a lot better. So, maybe this, maybe there's a cost-effective way of maybe there's a way of packaging this so that it fits into the criminal justice budget in a way that shows that it's cost-effective, that these recommendations are cost-effective. I guess that's my suggestion, but just comment. I'm really impressed with what you've done and how you've analyzed what you've done.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think there's many ways in which the system could be much cheaper than it is, right? We're incarcerating people for these huge sentences, which, in Illinois, the estimates are at least about $38,000 a year to keep somebody in IDOC, and that probably underestimates the real costs. And most of the transitional programs or the alternatives to incarceration are far cheaper than that. So it's true that dealing with those issues would have a major impact. Shortening the sentences and putting up a transitional component at the end, or even having programs throughout, would be much more effective. Of course, at the local level now, most of those decisions are decisions that are made at the state level. So I mean we do advocacy work at the state level. We work closely with what's the name of that state representative again?
Carol something.
Emmons.
Can't-
Yeah, we work closely with her on a number of criminal justice reforms. But at the same time, we need to act in our own community and mobilize whatever resources we can here to do what we can, and that means trying to talk about what are the possibilities for transitional housing here, what are the possibilities for workforce development kinds of programs here.
Okay, Diane.
I know there's something called, I think it's the Reentry Council, or is that what it's called in Champaign County? How do you coordinate with them?
So there's two things with the Reentry Council. So I was asked maybe about a couple years when they first built that or put together that council to sit on it as a community representative. So we meet monthly, and we kind of just go through, try to get a feel for what's going on at the state level and what we can do community-wise. And it's just one of those think tank sessions where a lot of people come in with their different ideas, and we try to identify funding along with trying to prioritize needs. So that's how I work with it. But we also, the second piece of that is that we also have somebody from First Followers that sits on it, because they actually established that prior to First Followers coming into existence. So we do have a seat at the table as well. Many times James attends those, or somebody else as a First Follower representative.
Are they working on these same issues, or do you have overlap?
There's some similarities, but one of the things that we do, so when we started this, we didn't want to do the case management thing at all. We wanted to do things a little differently, and that's why we came with the unique perspective of or approach of having peer mentors, people that have been through those similar struggles, those similar hurdles and challenges, to really push and to help to let the individuals know that we really understand where they've been and where they're trying to go. So that's one of the things. That's one of the key things that we we pride ourselves after. And another thing, and there is some overlap as far as they're more of a lot of things that they do is more referrals, and we try to handle everything that we do under roof. And what I mean by that, if a gentleman or a lady may come in and ask for employment services, looking for employment services, instead of us pointing in different directions, we will sit them down individually and go through an application process. We also will help them call employers and different things like that. We will help them physically fill out resumes. So all ours, we try to pride ours on personal services to a point where there's that one-on-one connection, that one-on-one commitment.
Okay.
Dennis?
Well, the program sounds very creative and inspirational, and as you know, the city does accept grants from nonprofit organizations under our social service fundings, and I'm wondering if you've thought about making an application this year.
Yes, we'll look into that. We haven't looked in it yet, but there is one thing that we did do from this research piece. It was the piece about transitional housing. So we saw that you all had that home grant that I think last couple weeks ago the deadline was. We didn't quite meet that because it needed that I think it was 25% up front to come up with a 25% of what the ask was. So we're not in that position as of yet.
But we'd certainly like to talk to you about the social service funding. Yeah, absolutely.
Because we also, we also fund services, not just hard funding for buildings and things.
Mayor Preston?
Do you know of any states that better prepare people for reentry, or any other countries?
Well, that's a big question. And certainly there's a lot of countries that do a better job than we do. I mean, most of the countries in Europe have a totally different approach toward incarceration, sentencing. There's quite a wonderful video that I show in one of the classes that I teach at the U of I, where a prison warden from the U.S. visits a prison in Norway, and he goes into the kitchen and he pulls out a long knife for chopping vegetables. And this is a collective kitchen where these people are doing like long sentences for violent felonies, and they've just got a complete kitchen full of knives. And you know, they don't stab each other. They're not expected to do that, and there's a different approach. I don't think that there's a particular state that has a wonderful kind of model for reentry. I think there's a lot of programs, I mean, like ours, and maybe some like even the county's programs that do a good job of handling a limited number of people. So, for example, even if you go to Chicago and you go to St. Leonard's House, I mean they have transitional housing for about 120 people. And they provide wraparound services for those people, and they can stay there for sometimes up to 2 years while they transition back into the community. They've managed to get the resources to buy some former residential hotels. I kind of thought of something like the Landmark Hotel, for example, as a potential St. Leonard's for Urbana.
Yeah,
But so maybe we'll come with our proposal for that next time. But seriously, there's a number of places that do programs like that. I would highly recommend you look at a program called A New Way of Life in Los Angeles, which is run by a woman named Susan Burton, who's been a CNN Woman of the Year. And this is a woman who spent something like 19 years in prison, long history of addiction, and she had started taking in women and their children who were coming home from prison, and now has a whole set of houses. But there's a lot of other programs. If you go on our website, we have the links to a whole number of other programs that are successful.
Okay, thank you.
Mike.
Quick question. I noted in your presentation that you indicated that about 1.4 billion state dollars are spent on incarceration, in the state penal system, and that 3% was allocated to programming. So back the envelope math is that's north of $40 million worth of programming a year, not an insignificant number. 3% may sound small, 40 million sounds like a pretty good sized number.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that 40 million, and let's just face it, there's not going to be more money for programming because the state's swimming in debt.
Right.
Is that 40 million just poorly spent? Is the programming poor, or what?
Well, with the low literacy rates and the overcrowding, it's just one of those things that there's a bottleneck. From our experience, most of that is spent on GED programs, and those are limited. Not every institution has a GED program. There used to be vocational training. Most institutions don't have those anymore. They stopped paying the local junior colleges or the community colleges that were involved in that. So they removed those out of the system. And one key thing is, even with the overcrowding of the prisons, they do not have the staff to allow for incarcerated folks to go in and out to classes and different things of that nature. So the overcrowding is problematic. And Governor Rounder is on record for saying that he's going to reduce the prison population by 25% before 2025, by 2025. And so and with this commission report that was released in December of 2016, he gives a series of recommendations. I think there were 14 recommendations. They know it's an issue, and he's working towards that. One of the things that we are doing, as James mentioned, with the advocacy piece at the state level, to try to see where best do we spend at 40 million, and how do we reverse this tide of what we're seeing. You know, as you said, our state is broke, pretty much, and it's just an issue. And a lot of this turn tides when the sentencing policies change.
I mean, maybe I can just make one clarification on why does overcrowding reduce programming? What it simply means is when prisons are overcrowded, people are in their cells all day. So if you talk to somebody, for example, who's coming from Danville, they'll tell you that they're in their cell 21, 22, 23 hours a day because they're so overcrowded. There's not enough staff to manage the program, or at least that's the reason they cut back on programming staff. So basically, it means people are locked up, which even more seriously multiplies the negative impacts of being incarcerated.
And just to piggyback on the population, overcrowding of the population, there's right about 50,000 individuals that are incarcerated. The system was only built for 32,000.
Yeah, I mean, I get that, and I commend Governor Rauner for taking this on in looking at sentencing and admitting the obvious that this whole get tough on crime movement the last few decades has in many ways been a failure. But I'm still just kind of curious about how that 40+ million is being spent. I understand that overcrowding would impact that, but there's still 40 million being spent.
Right.
And it would really be really nice to know how is that being spent and is it being used effectively. So
I think
I'm not necessarily asking for an answer. Of course, your observations, but I think it's curious that that much money is being spent and it's apparently not being spent well.
Right. I agree.
Okay, thank you very much, Marlon and James. Any other? Oh, Aaron, you have last word. You always want the last word.
I was just trying to be patient. First of all, thank you all for the presentation, and it's led me to think about a couple of different things. And the quote that those closest to the problem are those closest to the solution, I think is something that's extremely important for the paradigm shift that's needed for the thinking around incarceration or crimes that are being committed, and to just sort of address quickly the suspicion. Of course, many of you all know my story. I wouldn't be here without the pardon, and I hope that that other folks have that opportunity to serve. But there are plenty of brilliant people out there who are being locked away and whose gifts, skills, and talents are not being used or being put on display for the benefit of everybody, and who are not here to challenge some of the notions and some of the thought process and the thinking that exists even on this council, right? And so when I think about the 999 million plus 400 million plus 1 more million that's spent on incarceration versus the 40 million, it almost sounds de minimis. I just couldn't resist that, Mike. But the idea around how much we're spending on this and how much of that is low-level drug possession type of stuff, or people who have committed a serious crime but it was a lapse in judgment, right? So I know of a wonderful sister who's a part of your program, who I have encouraged to get a job in a particular location that I have some affiliation with. And I was approached by an individual who has a very prestigious position in that organization. And suspicion was raised around this individual's application. Immediately, suspicion was raised and hesitation. And I had to push back. So if I was not there to push back, then that application definitely goes to the bottom of the rung or in the trash can. Now, this individual, from what I understand, has a degree, has served in the military, has done all types of wonderful things, and is still doing amazing stuff for First Followers. So more than capable, more than competent, had a lapse in judgment, but now is all of a sudden going to be seen through this lens of suspicion, and I don't know if we can touch you for I don't know how long. Very meaningful job, very important job that this person would have access to. So I just wanted to speak very clearly, live today. I had this conversation with this individual on Thursday about the person who was making this application or putting in this application from First Followers. So I just want people to try to grasp and understand what that looks like and what that feels like, that no matter what you have done, you can make one mistake, one very bad mistake, out of passion, out of anger, whatever it may be, and now it haunts you forever, right? And that is a mentality that is not, it doesn't have to exist, but it is the way we in America want to do things. We want to punish people and incarcerate them and spend $1.4 billion locking them up, even when it doesn't even stop anything and it doesn't change anything. So I wonder, maybe we should flip the script, and maybe other people who have been in trouble should run things for a little while. Maybe we might make a little difference in things. Of course, I'm just being a little flippant, but I know that there are people out there who have a lot to offer, and I commend you all for the work that you're doing. And hopefully, we'll see something expand. Transitional housing is something that I know has been very effective, stabilizes individuals, and you're able to give them what you're able to give them with a real conversation and make them feel empowered for real. So I don't want to sort of beat a dead horse here. I just want to thank you all for your work, and hope that you'll continue and come back and make an appeal to us so that we can assist in any way that we possibly can. And to all the members and first followers, thank you all for coming and for sitting through. And I'm glad you came, because you all know that I've always advocated for the importance and understanding of political aspects for people with felony convictions, and for them to have to sit through an hour-and-a-half presentation. I think it was good training.
Thank you very much. I would just like to ask the remainder of first followers to just stand up and acknowledge and be acknowledged.
All right. No,
Thank you.
I actually do have one question. I hate to. I mean, that's a good place to stop. I did have one question, if we could answer it. I've thought before that sometimes when people come out, if they have family support in town and everything, it's great that they come out to their family support. But it seems like oftentimes they have conflicting. I mean, they have people they got in trouble with before that are taking their attention more. Always curious if there's ever any opportunities to have kind of an exchange program with another group similar to yours, where people would get a fresh start in a different town. Have you ever thought about that? Would it work? Is it just nonsense, or is there any need for a fresh start, do you think, from in a different town rather than going back to the same place where you came from?
Well, the IDOC doesn't allow you to do that. You're mandated to go back to the county in which you caught your case, unless there's special circumstances. But that's one of the mandates by the parole board, is that you have to be paroled back to the county in which you were sentenced.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Bill. Just one more.
Okay. Aaron?
I want to just add a point on that, though. I think it's important to recognize that people are put into very uncomfortable domestic situations often because the policy of the IDOC right now is to not release people unless they have an address to go to. So if they're homeless and they have 3 years of parole to do and they have no house to go to, they will stay in prison for those 3 years. So that is an incredibly destructive policy on so many levels, and it's compounded once again by our lack of homeless shelter in this county.
So transitional housing, a person could be released to transitional housing?
Yeah, it has to be, but it has to be approved by IDOC, the venue.
And there's another caveat to that as well. So the IDOC, one of the things that they do is, in order for you to be paroled, you have to have an address. But many times these individuals who have committed felonies, when they're paroled, you can't be paroled into public housing, any government subsidized housing. So we all know that many of us folks from low income, black and brown communities live in subsidized housing. So in a sense, you can't return back home many times. So to James' point, many times I just talked to a gentleman yesterday who's coming home in May, but he doesn't have anywhere to parole to. So in those scenarios, he has to stay and finish his parole if he can't come home, because here in Champaign County, his mother lives in subsidized housing, his sisters live in subsidized housing, so there's no way he can parole to those places, and you have to have an address to parole home.
Okay, thanks. Now there's more questions. Diane.
No, I would just piggyback on that. That actually is a policy of the Champaign County Housing Authority, which is stricter than what's required by the federal government. So it's a decision that could be changed at the county level if the Housing Authority chose to do that.
I mean, there has been attempts through the Reentry Council to get some movement on that. It hasn't borne fruit yet.
Charlie?
Yeah, so when federal parole takes place, I know there are folks go to halfway houses and situations like that, and you keep talking about wraparound housing, and it sounds like those kinds of things are very successful. So is there an effort to change Illinois DOC's relocation of individuals? What's the federal model that's used when folks come out of a federal system and go into parole?
Well, I mean, a relatively few people coming out of the federal system do go into a halfway house. Most people serve all their time, but we do have a halfway house here in Champaign. And in fact, a couple of the members of First Followers have been through that halfway house. I mean, I don't know of any movement within IDOC to reinstigate programs like halfway houses and work releases and so forth. I mean, it doesn't seem to be something that's catching fire at the moment.
But were those successful in the past at helping alleviate some of these problems? No, I've seen people say.
Well, I don't know. Do you anybody want to speak to that?
No.
No, actually, once you go to the federal halfway house, they make you stay for 6 months. And once you stay for 6 months, you have to go down to the Champaign Public Library. You have to learn how to get on the computer yourself. You have no aid of assist. They do not give you lotion. They do not give you anything. They give you a bed, and then they give you 3 meals a day. Once you find a job, you are told to give how much?
Yeah, basically, they pimper you because seriously, I just left out the halfway house. You can't use it for no reference. They don't co-sign for no job. But when you get a job, you gotta give 25% of your gross pay. So basically, that's all they do for you.
So basically, the kind of wraparound housing is important to them, the whole pattern. Okay, great, thank you.
I mean, one of the things that we believe in a transitional housing is that we should have an education program within that. We have this idea of, community development through reentry, so we want to instill that ethic in people, as well as, the issues of mental health and substance abuse being incorporated into a program. It's not just providing a bed. It's not just providing a bed and food. It's much more complicated than that. And St. Leonard's is a good example of something that goes well beyond that.
So just to wrap up for me, I was just reminded of when you talked about the recidivism and where you parole to when you come home. The low literacy rates, the substance abuse, the mental health concerns, along with the fact that you have the felony conviction. So this is why I have always advocated why we have to see beyond just the need, for instance, for more police to address a concern for a crime or something, that we have to actually spend more than we spend on those things to address the concerns that lead to incarceration, and to partner with the school districts or the park districts or businesses or whatever to address low literacy rates, those particular things that we know are a direct caveat and catalyst to recidivism or to committing crime in the first place. So I just want us to, I think it's beyond time for the rest of us to really understand, for the community to understand that this is not something we can ship to some other city or county, right? You know what I mean? This is not something we can just pass the buck on. We have to address this, and we have to think about things different than the way that we have normally thought about them around crime and recidivism. So, and I just wanted to address one thing from a financial standpoint. As we talked about, 86% of the people being African American, and most of the people who are being paroled going to low-income places where are predominantly African American. There was a study that was busting the myth of bootstrap mentality, is something that I read earlier today. And what I found to be very enlightening about that is that when I just think of what it would be like if I inherited a home that I didn't have to pay mortgage or didn't have to pay rent, and I inherited maybe 2 or 3 of them, or and I inherited vehicles that I didn't have to pay for, right? And so now I can just work a regular job. I could work at the university making $18 an hour, or however, what it is, $15 an hour. I could work a regular job and be fine if I had the benefit of many white Americans who inherited a whatever it is, right? So I think that this conversation is extremely important for us to understand, because we have definitely heard in these conversations around incarceration this bootstrap mentality, which is sort of pull yourself up by your bootstrap and address this income inequality that leads to incarceration, low literacy rates, and all that kind of different stuff. So it's a very difficult conversation. I understand that, but I don't think we get anywhere by sugarcoating it or acting as if it doesn't have very specific racialized mass incarceration that has to be dealt with, and how that is perpetrated on a regular basis, and how it percolates throughout the system, because most of the people who have money have inherited that money. They have not earned it on their own. Very few people actually embarked on something and made money on their own. Even that guy that's sitting in that White House that slaves built got $1 million or got some money from his daddy before he got things started. So I just think people need to understand how important it is to recognize what that means. And if we're going to actually address it, that means money has to be spent. Significant amounts of money have to be spent to address those particular concerns that you guys laid out and address those recommendations, and not think that we can just continue to lock people up.
Can I add something to that, Aaron, or address something? For an example, you all seen Perry Klein. Perry Klein, he's a junior at the University of Illinois. He came in, first followers looking for a job. So one of the things that James and we do, we sit down, we ask questions. We're going to talk. We're just going to have general conversation about whatever it is. He was looking for a job. I saw something different in Perry, and that's called social capital. I saw that. I wasn't going to point him into the direction of the local Popeyes where you make $8 an hour or whatever, what have you. So we had a seed fund from our startup, which we did a GoFundMe, and we had enough money where we used it to invest in Perry. You come down here 2-3 days a week, you work on your studies, we talk about whatever you want to talk about, we help you get through whatever you want to get through, and those are the things that we do. And this model or this philosophy that we use is earn as you learn. Because I figure if I can pay you to sit here and learn about the social consciousness of what's going on and what Aaron is alluding to, if I can sit and have those general conversations with you about a system that's been put in place over time, and you can begin to connect the dots while working on yourself and stabilizing yourself, but not having to work or go out and find this meaningless work where you can't feed your 2 and 3 kids because of that social stigma or that felony conviction that you have. So our whole thing is we're building a model where we like to say, earn as you learn. We teach, whether that's going back to get your GED, adult basic education, Parkland, U of I, because education is going to be the key. That's going to shift the paradigm and change that conversation. And I'd like to put those folks in front of what we do, because it gives that counter narrative about social capital. Because I believe that everybody has some skill, some talent, whereas you just have to, they've been oppressed, downtrodden for so long that they forget about them, and they just revert back to what they knew best that got them in trouble in the first place. But the opportunity that has to be there. And James and we do the heavy lifting on that end, because we can get into spaces, because at the end of the day, I have a formal education behind me. And I know I can sit down with the best of whoever it is and intellectually conversate on what it looks like to come from the other side of the tracks without having these blow-ups about race and different things like that. Those are difficult conversations that we have to have on every level, no matter where we go, because we need to build an awareness, because at the end of the day, when you're saying that there's 50,000 individuals that are incarcerated in the Illinois Department of Corrections, I can guarantee you there's more Perry Kleins out there.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thanks, fellas.
And thanks for your passion. Okay, one more presentation on Guaranteed Energy Savings Project. Is that Scott Tess?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm Scott Tess, Environmental Sustainability Manager.
Vince Gustafson, Facilities Manager.
We're here to share some information with you about a Guaranteed Energy Savings Project. This is a particular type of capital improvement project that staff is pursuing. The purpose of the project is to reduce utility bill expenditures by improving city facilities without using capital improvement funds. This would work to address City Council and Mayor Goal 6.2. More specifically, the purpose of the request for proposal that we're developing is to competitively select an energy services company, an ESCO, to do two basic things. One is to conduct a comprehensive audit of any energy or water consuming equipment that the city owns. The second is to install energy/pollution/money saving equipment through a guaranteed energy savings contract. These types of contracts are turnkey or design build services, where everything that is to be done, all the way from analysis to procurement to construction, potentially operations and maintenance, and verification and measurement and monitoring, is all done under one contract, one vendor, one point of contact, one party responsible. Some of the benefits also include, of course, reducing energy consumption and the attendant pollution, reducing utility bill expenditures, potentially, depending on the projects you choose, improve building occupant comfort, potentially, depending on the projects you choose, improving lighting quality, potentially conserving staff time, as we put a lot of the design and procurement and project management time on the vendor. We save staff time. And another important aspect or benefit is that you're able to use utility bill savings to pay the project loan. The process for a guaranteed energy savings project is prescribed in state statute. So in developing our request for proposal, we're following the state statute. Some important elements of that statute include that the ESCO, the Energy Services Company, will guarantee energy savings. What that means is that the contract is going to stipulate the costs of the projects you choose, what the savings are going to be year on year, and the methods for monitoring those savings. And if the actual savings fall short of the guaranteed savings, the ESCO has to write a check for the difference. Another important element is that project savings must pay for the project within 20 years. What that means is we're not looking at any cutting edge, never tested before technology. We're not looking at anything that's going to have a lifetime of payback. We're only looking at bona fide energy saving equipment and projects. Staff is receiving assistance in developing the request for a proposal and evaluating proposals, and in creating a contract from the Illinois Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity. They have folks that have been working on performance-based contracting for 3 decades in Illinois, even preceding the statute that we're following, which dates to 1993. The statute also requires that a city have an engineer or an architect review the guaranteed energy savings contract. We will be procuring those services from a private vendor. Some typical guaranteed energy savings contract projects may include heating, ventilation, air conditioning, control systems for the same, indoor lighting, outdoor lighting. There are other types of projects, but we aren't looking at them as they may involve equipment that a water utility, a wastewater utility, an electric utility would have. We don't own those, so we're not looking at that type of equipment. This is a very general list, very generic, and it's that way on purpose. The state statute that prescribes the procurement process for this type of project is kind of a blend between a request for proposal, for project proposals, and a request for qualifications. So the RFP that we use follows that procedure and asks for lots of information about the company itself, and also asks for a preliminary project proposal, preliminary cash flow analysis, that sort of thing. To just expound upon that a little bit more, what that means is we're not asking the ESCOs, the energy services companies, to give us a price for a certain set of equipment or projects. What we're doing is leveraging their expertise to look at all of our facilities and go out and find energy savings for us. So this is the typical process. It is very long. It can take a year or longer. You see that about 2/3 down the list, there is a bullet, public meeting to award contract. The state statute requires a public meeting to award the contract, 10 days notice. Since we have Committee of the Whole and City Council already having public meetings, it makes sense to bring our contract to Committee of the Whole and City Council. The state statute doesn't prescribe what body or what staff person approves the contract, but since we have to have it at a public meeting anyway, it does make it's our intention at this time to bring the final contract to City Council, Committee of the Whole and City Council for approval. Just to summarize, a guaranteed energy savings project is a single bundle of several different energy or money saving improvements on city facilities. The bidding and vendor selection is stipulated by state statute. It would be paid for with a loan, and the loan is paid for with the utility bill savings, not to exceed a payback period of 20 years. This is where we stand today. The items in gray at the top have already been completed by staff. The items bolded in the middle are the next pieces of work for us, provided that council has no objections. Staff would proceed with those items in bold and then bring a project proposal to council. Happy to take any questions you may have.
Charlie.
Yeah, the first thing that comes to mind is how this fits in with the total facilities overview that we're long past due.
I think my position on this, we have several large pieces of equipment here in this facility alone that are near the, I guess, expected life expectancy, the end. A large boiler that's essentially deemed obsolete by the manufacturer. Our building automation control systems also deemed obsolete by the manufacturer. Maintenance costs for these items, along with some other equipment, including a domestic hot water heater, are only going to increase for us, and our ability to maintain this equipment is only going to increase for us. So I view replacement of these, just one example, this facility alone of these 3 items as being part of our capital improvement budget within the next year, 3 years. So I look at this as an alternative funding mechanism to take care of projects that we're going to be paying for regardless. I mean, we have to keep the heat on and we need hot water. And obviously being able to control the set points and all the settings and the complicated systems that we have here just in this facility alone. I agree with you that we do need to have the discussion about the overall big picture and planning, but I see this as one small piece of that puzzle that could help us maybe find some alternative funding and free up that money for the long list of other projects we need to talk about soon.
So you're saying that it would dovetail or complement a separate facility study?
Agreed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Diane?
How much do we spend on utilities, and what do you expect to save? I'm just curious. I don't.
Several $100,000 annually. The percentage saving is where we bring in the experts to tell us exactly what we can do. Look at the big picture across the board.
And about half of our electricity demand is streetlights, and retrofitting those to LED may get us somewhere between 1/3 and 2/3 reduction in that portion. So it could be significant.
Okay. Were you looking for any direction from us, or are you just going to keep going?
Right.
Okay.
Provided that there's no objections, we would continue on with this process. We would bring a contract to Committee of the Whole and Council for approval. It would have a number of projects in it, and that would be the next step.
Okay, Mike.
At 9:45, I almost hate to wade into the weeds here, but so you're talking about HVAC and those types of things. I can understand stretching out to a 20-year ROI on an LED lamp head. How do you justify that on an HVAC unit? I'm not aware of one that has a legitimate 20-year life.
Well, there would be a bundle of projects most likely, and they won't all have the same life expectancy. They won't all have the same payback period. And in terms of the statutory requirement, you're really blending those together. The statute allows projects to have a payback as long as 20 years. It's at our discretion what projects we choose out of what the ESCO proposes. And if we don't want to put more projects in that bundle and extend the timeline closer to 20 years, we don't have to. If we want to be more conservative than that and focus on something on a 10 to 15 year timeline for the whole bundle, that's our choice. And we'll be able to see the cost and the benefit for each of the projects individually, and that'll be part of our evaluation of the proposals.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Just one quick.
Okay,
So
Aaron?
for the projects like the Landmark Hotel, how would something like this for HVAC system fit into something like that, or am I just asking a question at 9:45 I shouldn't ask?
That may not apply as it's not city-owned facility.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
All
Yeah, we're paying for it, but we won't own it.
Okay, thanks. Are there any other staff reports?
Counselor.
Oh.
Just real briefly, since I'm sitting here, in your packet is the Environmental Sustainability Division's annual report. One page highlights the Solar Urbana-Champaign program that we ran last year, one of the most successful in the country. We're actually fortunate to be able to work with the Midwest Renewable Energy Association again on a second round of that project, and Solar Power Hour dates should be posted on solarurbanachampaign.com probably this week.
Okay, great. Thank you. Brandon.
Quick highlights from the Business and Development Report for February that was in your packets. Strawberry Fields owner Mohammed Al-Hiti has informed staff that he will consolidate World Harvest Foods into the Strawberry Fields location. Again, this is a consolidation. It'll limit the total amount of the natural fruit grocery, but it'll include all of World Harvest and keep many of the current offerings of Strawberry Fields. So an exciting expansion of products in our downtown. O'Reilly Auto Parts has submitted a minor subdivision plat for a new O'Reilly Auto Parts store, so that would be a new store, would be the culmination of that process on Philo Road. That would be just north of the CVS on the east side of the road. Bluebird Boutique is a new women's clothing store that has signed a lease with the city for property we own. And really, I think the history is we hold it on behalf of the library, but that's at 212 West Green Street. For Think Urbana promotions, we held our first ever Urbana Home Builders Breakfast back in February on the 23rd, and we had a really good event. We had some new developers who hadn't done work in Urbana in a long time, and it was exciting to hear from them. And we also heard from Mike Kennedy of Kennedy Builders, who talked about his success and use of the Think Urbana sales tax exemptions and property tax abatements. We also held a business development luncheon that was sponsored by the Atkins Group. It was held at the upstairs at Addie's Bar and Grill. We had over 50 folks attend, and we had a small panel of developers and realtor. Again, Think Urbana. And then coming up, we have the 2017 Realtor Bus Tour. We're really pleased. This is also going to be sponsored by the Atkins Group, Addie's Bar and Grill, as well as First Federal Bank. That's going to be on April 13th. Our goal is to have a full bus. Other upcoming Think Urbana is that the Home and Garden show at Lincoln Square. For Open Scene, we've had 2 of our 4 stakeholder workshops with artists, Derek Lindsay, and just this past weekend with Andrea Perkins. The way it works is on the weekends that these are held, the Friday is open to the public, as is the Sunday event, where the youth share some of the work they've done with the artist on the Saturday part that's closed to the public. The next one of those is coming up on March 26th, and it's going to be with Mother Nature, a hip-hop duo. So you'll receive more information on that. UVA's started a new event this year called the World's Shortest St. Patrick Day Parade. We have it scheduled for March 17th. A very short closure of Main Street, which our business owners appreciate. And one other bit of news. For February of this year, we had our highest year-to-date, single and two-family home square footage added over the last 4 years. So, it's still early in the year, but a good indication that the Think Urbana program is working. A lot of interested developers for 1 and 2 family homes right now. Any questions?
Any questions? Mike?
I just wanted to add there's 6 new foundations being dug in Stone Creek and South Ridge right now for new homes.
Good. Anyone else? Okay, thank you. Okay, we have some business tonight. First up is resolution number 2017-03-017R, a resolution of support to plan and create a public greenway and bike and pedestrian multi-use pathway along the Boneyard Creek corridor from the University of Illinois campus to downtown Urbana.
Move approval. No, I'm sorry.
Dennis has a short presentation. Dennis has a short presentation on this.
Okay, Daryl. So property owner Daryl Foste is with me, and I'm Dennis Roberts, Ward 5. And really we're kind of doing a review here of something that we kind of explored about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago maybe, as time goes by. And this is to respond to actually Daryl Foste's original contact with me about his concern about property damage that he's experienced in properties along the Boneyard Creek that he owns. Foundations cracking, land subsidence issues, which led us to a discussion about a vision for what could happen along the Boneyard Creek in a certain area of our town from the downtown westward, which is where his property is. So in the old days, in it was 1978, we actually had a plan drafted after a considerable discussion about how to prevent flooding in the campus town area, and it was a plan that encompassed the Boneyard Creek from its entry into the city area in Champaign to its exit in East Urbana, where it joins the Saline Creek. And I'm just showing you a couple of pages of that plan, showing the downtown area of Urbana and areas that we're going to talk about in a minute. That's the overview for the entire project through the Champaign-Urbana area. And this plan, was an inventive, creative plan, and it included interesting sketches for bike path, bridges across the creek, things that they were imagining back in '78 that would enhance the creek and make it a public parkway. And when it comes to into Urbana, they imagined a plaza along the creek, gathering place for people. Well, the city began to actually do something creative and significant along the creek. Starting in 2008, we hired consultants using TIF money. They came up with a great plan, and one part of the plan, segment 3, was actually completed. Inset picture shows the dedication of that section. It was in 2012. Well, there's a lot to see about the creek and how it connects to things that are already completed, not only in Champaign completely, from the 2nd Street detention basin through the campus to the engineering quad, where there's a beautiful setback and bridges and stonework modifying the creek into a beautiful area. Then it disappears sort of and it becomes a ditch, enters into Urbana, and it doesn't really become anything that anybody can even get near or appreciate until it gets to the improvement areas that we're working on today, of which only 1 out of 5 is completed. You can see the map here. Well, one of the interesting areas right in the downtown that would actually connect, start the connection to make something beautiful in our community along the creek is what I call the Golden Triangle. And this is the triangle that's created by the splitting of Springfield Avenue and Main Street, and it encompasses the properties along the creek that are in this area. And this is what happens to be Daryl Fosty actually owns property in the area. And when you look at a property map, this needs to be updated slightly because there was a land change in one of the quadrants here, but it shows you that the landowners in this area are basically two major ones, Mr. Fosty and then Peter Boxa, who has property along Springfield Avenue. His property is in purple. Mr. Fosty's is in gold. And Daryl, do you want to mention about your property, or what did you envision when you originally talked to us about your property and this area of the creek?
Well, previously there were funds available through the state and through the federal government that this could be turned into a wetlands restoration or a park and recreation area. And I was working with a professor, Dr. Alberto Nieto, a geology professor at the U of I, and he told me why this land was subsiding due to underground soil movement. And he said you could, if you wanted to build there, you needed to have the footings below the level of the Boneyard Creek. Well, in this area, that means the footings have to be at least 15 feet deep, which is kind of prohibitive for a single family dwelling. Well, if you maybe a larger building, but my neighbors have informed me they do not want a larger building, and they will fight any kind of upzoning. So that means a park, which is what I prefer, to have a park area in there that's this close to downtown Urbana, and it's between the downtown and the campus. It's just my own opinion. It would be a marvelous location for a park. Different venues for many different things that the city could have. When we have a Sweet Corn Festival, when we used to have the Chili Festival, that's a place things could happen there. And we're going to have an access to a beginning of a bicycle path and a pedestrian path to get down to Campus Town. When I first got the property, there were different, what we were corresponded with by city people then about how it could be a path, a trail of some sort to campus. So I've dealt with this. I've tried to fix up properties, and they keep breaking apart, and it's a no-win situation. So I'm fully supportive of turning this over into a recreation area. People from Carl walk by my house every day just to walk down there. They walk down to Strawberry Fields. They walk by the area. It's just a pedestrian-friendly area, and I'd love to see it enhanced, beautified, that the city could enjoy it.
Right. And then, as you know, we actually did a walk through the area in 2015 in September, exploring some of the issues that were raised and just really looking at it and kind of rediscovering it. You know, at that time, because of the houses along Springfield, nobody really even saw behind the houses and what was there. And when we walked through there, not only did we find that there was a huge, beautiful trees, and it was kind of like a mini hidden forest right near the downtown, but there's even a kind of a gravel drive, which is sort of like a secondary alley that runs through the whole thing. Gives you access to it. And wouldn't it be great if that was somehow made into a public area, a public access area? And some of the other things that we noticed on our walkthrough of the property was all the problems. We have houses with collapsing foundations, cracked driveways and parking pads. Even the park district had raised beds which were cracking apart, and staff was checking out a sinkhole that was in the backyard of one of Mr. Fosty's properties. Well, the reason is that partly it's because it's in the floodplain, and also because at one time during early pioneer times, this triangle was actually the site of a buffalo wallow and a natural spring. And it was about 10 to 15 feet below the ground level, and there are photographs from the turn of the century that actually show that. Well, later on, as the city grew, buildings were built there. The Flatiron Building was on the corner, which they used, and this area became somewhat more useful. Well, it got filled in, after the fire. There was a serious fire in, okay, I'm not going to remember the date, it was 1881, I think, downtown, which destroyed 30 businesses along Main Street. So what do? They just said, well, we're going to fill up the Buffalo Wallow, and they bulldozed all the property and all the debris into there. And even today, if you excavate there, because I know I did an archaeological excavation near the area, and it's just all all kinds of building material and crumb, just old stuff that's filled in. So that's one reason why we have a problem with settling on that property, and it's not a stable area. Well, Mr. Fossey owns a heck of a lot of property right there in that Golden Triangle, and if you look at this map, it's about as close as you can get to the improvement area that we've already planned for. It passes right through a pocket park owned by the Urbana Park District, goes right to the Phillips I can never remember the name of that place, the Phillips Recreation Center, which of course is mostly paved over, but the creek goes under the parking lot there, comes out. Where does it come out? It comes out on the other side of Springfield. And what's on the other side of Springfield? It's a city-owned parking lot, which runs near the creek. So there's a really interesting potential for connecting this property up through the Park District and city properties to make something of it. And we're heading, of course, the idea is to head westward toward the university campus and connect with the boneyard improvements, which are already there. Guess what? This area is also in the TIF districts that have been recently put up. So there actually would be reason to try to improve the area. And the new TIF district that we've created includes a lot of Park District land. And the reason why we did that is to allow the Park Districts to improve their property, to raise the basic property value of the community and the city. So we're asking now, how can we get this thing initiated? How can we jumpstart this project to make something of it? A year and a half has gone by. We haven't seen any activity. So Daryl Fossey and I just have decided we're just going to start talking about it to different community groups. So we've gone to first of all, we contacted Rodney Davis's office to find out if he would know of any federal funding that would be used for this conversion of green space or whatever.
You guys found it? I'm sorry. I just
not in person, but we've had good communication with one of his staff members. Thank you very much. And and we're also have tried to approach Dick Durbin through the mayor's office. We asked maybe she could contact him for us. And we've sent out a pretty good letter, and we actually got some suggestions, some grant money that we could apply for should we be able to pull that together. Oops, we didn't. So currently, right now, we went before the parks. We went to the Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Commission and made up this presentation there. We went just in the same week. We went to the Champaign County Regional Planning Commission meeting and made a presentation there, and we got extremely positive feedback from these groups. They would love to see this happen. It's within their own goals. So when we were talking to the Regional Planning Commission, they said, what a great idea, and you know what, they're actually CUATS funds could be used to create a plan, to draft a plan, because the city is part of CUATS, and this is our goal, is to create new plans for the community. But we would prefer that this request to partner and to work on this project should come from the city itself, because you're just Dennis Roberts. You don't represent really anybody but your board. And, we need something more significant than you're trying to have some kind of enthusiastic idea to proceed. So I've come back to you. I've created a resolution of support. The title of it is a resolution of support to plan and create a public greenway and bike and pedestrian multi-use pathway along the Boneyard Creek corridor from the University of Illinois campus to the downtown Urbana. Currently, if you look at our planning documents, to plan this section of the Boneyard doesn't even appear, except in our city council and our goals. Why? Because I asked that it be added. But we all agree, and we had a really good conversation when we had a walkthrough, and we had, I think, the intent. But without doing anything to motivate that, we were not going to be able to actually fulfill a goal and actually create anything happen. So instead of waiting, why don't we act? Let's begin to partner with a few of the community members that already expressed interest, and others. We're going to be talking to the Park District next week, or maybe it's going to be Wednesday. I have to look and see. And we're going to, and we're interested in, we're interested in communicating with other members of the community and community at large. And just as an interesting factor, it turns out that another item on our agenda has to do with connectivity with the Kickapoo Trail, which is obviously tie in exactly with the goal of this project too. So we're already working to the east. Let's not forget this important section between the west and the downtown, which could also become an economic traveling corridor for students at the university and enthusiasts of biking and walking. So that's why this is before you, and it would then, furthermore, we'd want to be sending a letter expressing the interest of the city, if we approve of this, to work in partnership with the Champaign County Regional Planning Commission, because they're the ones who asked for it, and other appropriate organizations to achieve this goal, and that this would allow us to write a letter providing confirmation that this is our intent, so we could officially tell the CCRPC that we do approve of this direction. Any questions?
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Daryl or Dennis? Eric.
So, I have a couple of thoughts. You know, I've walked through there and I've seen the evidence of the subsidence, and I know that Strawberry Fields lost the stairway on the north side of their building to the subsidence.
Yes.
Not an expert on construction. I would value, if it makes sense, if Mr. Gray thinks it makes sense, to get an opinion from Public Works on whether, you know, this area really is unfeasible for continued development, because this is, you know, part of the issue. I mean, it to me it makes sense that, you know, I've seen the evidence of the subsidence, the explanation makes sense to me, but I'm not an expert in structures. So I would, you know, I'd like Public Works to look at that, and then.
Can I comment on that?
Sure.
Well, we're not proposing that this eliminate structures along any street in particular. What I'm interested in doing is seeing if we can land bank it for the future. If not, parcels that people are willing to make available to the city to purchase as is without worrying about structures on them, which Mr. Fossey is one of those participants. Or to allow people to build, you know, where they may along the floodplain as they will, but still to be able to purchase the easements along the floodplain, you know, in an adequate width. Because currently what we have is a maintenance easement, but we do not have an easement that allows us to put any permanent fixtures along the floodplain. So we can get there. We can bring a steam shovel in to make the you know, I don't know, to scrape the bottom of the creek or whatever, but we don't have access to a permanent community amenity that would allow people to walk along the property edge.
So how wide are you far enough along to say how wide?
We're not there yet. You know, all we're saying is, first of all, is let's see if we can get grant money available. Kuwats is ready to write grants for us because they know of places that we can apply for. They feel like it's an important thing. They agree with the project. They're willing to partner with us to write grants. So I'd rather have them do it than me to try to do it. And we could invite, perhaps one of the grants could be to devise a sketch of what the proposal would be. Without, you know, we don't have a plan yet. We don't know which side of the boneyard would be the appropriate place to place a pathway, but we could even invite students at the university to charrette a concept for us. But right now we have zero planning. There's been zero planning anywhere about this project or this direction toward the connectivity with the university.
Okay. Charlie, did you have a question? No, we need to wrap up. Oh, okay.
Okay, we're sorry done. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I mean, the only comment I'd have would be that we should also probably coordinate with our stormwater management plan. I think we have a stormwater feasibility study scheduled in the capital improvement plan within a couple of years. But this TIF district, TIF 2, is also going to expire not too far along, what, 2022? Is that right? 2022. So thanks for taking this initiative. I do think we should move on. Does
Just
anybody?
the first step, if we can just start, say that we actually care about it and we'd like to do something, and we find out what to do exactly down the line.
Is there a motion to forward this to City Council? Diane.
I move that we send resolution number 2017-03-017R to council with a recommendation for approval.
It's been moved by Marlin, seconded by Ammons. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries.
Brilliant, thanks.
Thank you for your time. I
Thank
appreciate
you.
it.
Next, we have ordinance number 2017-03-013, an ordinance annexing certain territory to the city of Urbana, 2912 East Main Street, Urbana's Champaign Sanitary District, Community Development.
So this is the annexation for that sanitary district property that we did the agreement on 2 meetings ago. And this is the annexation to follow, and Bruce Butler is here from the sanitary district this evening.
Charlie.
Move to send to council for recommendation for approval.
Second. It's been moved by Smythe, seconded by Ammons. Any discussion? Bruce Butler has been waiting here for 3 hours and 10 minutes, and you don't have any questions for him.
We didn't have any questions. We asked the questions last time.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. And thank you, Bruce, for sticking around.
Great job, Bruce.
Next, we have resolution number 2017-03-013R, a resolution certifying a community housing development organization for the Urbana Home Consortium Habitat for February 2017 community development.
And I think the item 10 is related as well.
Okay. And that is Resolution 2017-03-014R, a resolution approving and authorizing the execution of an Urbana Home Consortium Community Housing Development Organization Agreement for Habitat Chodo Developer, FY 2016-2017.
So both Kelly and Matt are in training this week, so they've given me a little crib sheet here. This is the exercise that we do each year for HUD to certify Habitat as a community housing development organization. This indicates that Habitat has met the Home Consortium standards to be certified as a CHODO. The agreement will commit $96,181 in these set-aside funds to Habitat for construction or rehab of 3 homes. And of these 3 homes, 2 are located in Urbana, 1404 Hill and 1212 Hill, and then 1 on Tawny Court in Champaign. Work is underway in all the 3 units with completion expected this year. They do have firm commitments from other funding sources for each of the projects as well. They've met the City of Urbana and Home Consortium underwriting and subsidy layering procedures, and committing these funds will help us to meet our timeliness obligations for the home funds.
Diane?
I move that we send resolution number 2017-03-013R to council with a recommendation for approval.
It's been moved by Marlon, seconded by Charlie to move 20 to 013R to council. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Charlie.
So I've moved resolution 2017-314R to council with a recommendation for approval.
I'll second.
It's moved by Smythe, seconded by Roberts. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you, Libby. Next up, we have resolution number 2017-03-015R, resolution approving an intergovernmental agreement between City of Urbana, Champaign County Forest Preserve District, Urbana Park District regarding Kickapoo Rail Trail for an agreement to study regarding connectivity of Kickapoo Rail Trail to Weaver Park and surrounding area. Public Works Bill Gregg.
Thank you. Caitlin Lill from the Urbana Park District is here also, and in case there's questions that I'm not able to answer. But this is a project that's been in discussion in the last several months with the Forest Preserve and the Park District and the city. As many of you know, the west terminus of the Kickapoo Rail Trail is the it's the Main Street spur at University Avenue. So it's a little bit west of High Cross Road. And right now where it ends, it just kind of ends, and there's no great opportunity for parking or direct access for those who want to use the trail. There's been lots of ideas that have been thrown out, and in discussions with the Park District to the Weaver Park, although is not fully developed yet, among many aspects of that park would be this would be a great trailhead or parking facility that could access the Kickapoo Rail Trail. And I think in the full vision, I think we all see the KRT going further west, probably through downtown Urbana, who knows, across campus to Champaign and beyond. So thinking more globally, we see this trail moving further west as time goes on, but it is what it is. We need to look at interim solutions, decisions, and perhaps more permanent solutions. Hence, the three agencies came together, and Urbana Park District took the lead on this effort. We thought, since they would be potentially using our streets, our right-of-ways, needing potentially our help, we thought we would be appropriate to be a one-third partner in this effort. So they have contacted and entered, working through an agreement with the Regional Planning Commission. And you saw in the packet the agreement. It's a fairly straightforward agreement with us in the Park District and the Forest Reserve, and the scope of services, and its staff recommendation that we would enter into such an agreement, hence the attached resolution.
Any questions for Bill? Charlie?
Yeah, this might be for Caitlin too. Is included in the scope of this approaching Norfolk Southern for what they want to gain access to the rest of the trail to Smith Road?
To my understanding, the Champaign County Forest Preserve District is going to be taking the lead on that portion of the conversation. They have some very good contacts already within the railroad system, and so I'm not sure what their timeline on that is, given that the path is under construction and anticipated that those first 6 miles are anticipated to open in July, but they'll be beginning that conversation soon.
Any other questions? Charlie?
Move to send to council the recommendation for approval.
Second.
It's been moved by Smythe, seconded by Ammons. Any other questions or discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Is that an opposed? No. Okay. Maybe next week. All right. Thank you.
A yawn.
Next up is resolution number 2017-03-016R, resolution for improvement by municipality under the Illinois Highway Code, North Lincoln Avenue resurfacing project, Public Works.
Okay, good evening. I'm Craig Schunkbrother, Assistant City Engineer, and I have with me Jake McCoy. He's one of the engineers that works on our engineering division, and he's the one that does all the design work on this particular project, and will be overseeing the construction for it this summer. Basically, what we have before you is a motor fuel tax resolution allocating funding for the resurfacing of Lincoln Avenue from, I'm showing on the map here, from basically south of Killarney, which is near Andres Harley Davidson, to just north of Saline Court, which is where the new section of Lincoln will begin and go up to Olympian Drive. This section of road has got a good solid base to it. It just needs a new surface. We plan on fixing some of the drainage, curb and gutter issues. We want to put in new American Disability Act compliant sidewalk ramps. And we, at this point, are anticipating about $1.4 million project. We currently have budgeted in the line item $1.9 million. We are reserving about $500,000 at this point for an omission near Summer Drive. We had a pavement analysis done by a pavement expert, and that section of the road is actually in too bad a shape to go ahead and resurface, and we have to reconstruct that section in later years. And we really need it. We need the north piece of North Lincoln to be open to be able to do that, because we're going to have to close portions of that section, and sometime in the future here. And when I say sometime, I would say probably in the 3 to 5 year range, and then route traffic to the north while we have to rebuild that portion. But for now, we're going to keep it together and go ahead and get the rest of the sections resurfaced and basically brought up to speed here this summer. So it's staff's recommendation to ask council to, or the committee of the whole, to forward the attached resolution to the city council. Have any questions?
Any questions for Craig? No questions. Diane?
I'll move resolution number 2017-03-016R to council with a recommendation for approval.
Second.
Been moved by Marlin, seconded by Jacobson. Any discussion?
So, yeah, just
Charlie.
real quick. So, so you're saving $500,000 to do that reconstruction. Is that
We got to cost that out, but it'll be reserved for that.
for
yes.
that?
Yes.
But we don't know what the cost will be yet.
No.
Okay.
No.
That seems pretty high for that shortest section.
It's about 1,000 foot of road though.
Oh, okay.
It does on the map. It doesn't look very long,
Yeah,
but
okay.
The total length of this project end to end is about 1.3 miles.
Oh, okay. Okay, that's good to know.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. And it has to be, of course, heavy-duty concrete then, and all that because of the trucks.
Well,
up there.
we'll have to look at that, but I will tell you that this section of road, we did some counts, and it's the heaviest as far as truck traffic in the whole city. We're talking about 30% trucks on this section, and it makes sense. I mean, we have a lot of industrial traffic up there. Yeah.
Do you know if the recycling center is completely open now? That the construction recycling on Saline Drive? I don't know.
Oh, yeah, the shingle
Yeah,
recycler.
shingle.
Yes,
They're completely
Henson.
open. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Any other questions or discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Seeing no further business, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.